Hey everybody, welcome to an emergency episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here as always, and the emergency is that Kyler Murray is now a Minnesota Viking. The Vikings have just announced that they have signed Kyler Murray to a one-year contract to become their quarterback for next season. Now, this is something that we have spent quite a bit of time talking about, breaking down, arguing about, and debating about. So let's get into the reasons why the Vikings would make Kyler Murray their quarterback, the outlook for him for 2026 and beyond, what it means for JJ McCarthy and his future, and what you guys think as Vikings fans of now having Kyler Murray as the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. I want to start out first. I know that Tom Pelissero tweeted that they're hoping competition will get the best out of McCarthy, but I think that we can say right off the bat that Kyler Murray is by far the most likely option for the Minnesota Vikings as their starting quarterback really from day one. And we saw last night as things were getting sorted out of what Kyler was going to do, what his plans were. And it was kind of interesting because Tom reported along with a radio host from Arizona that Kyler Murray was going to have some Zoom meetings with teams that might potentially need a starting quarterback for 2027, reintroducing himself to some of those teams. So I think it's in Kyler Murray's plans to have a very good season with the Vikings and then see what happens after that, maybe similar to Sam Darnold, or potentially stay with the Vikings. But it was also mentioned in that reporting, not by Tom, but by the Arizona radio host, that Kyler Murray was not going to go anywhere where he was not going to be the starting quarterback right away. So we can probably dispel some of the idea that there's going to be a competition. I'm sure that we will hear from Kevin O'Connell that he wants it to be a very competitive room and that he wants, Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy to get the best out of each other and push each other and so forth. But make no mistake, Kyler Murray is coming here to be the starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. So why would they do this? Why would they want Kyler Murray? And it's been asked to me a number of times, if the Arizona Cardinals moved on, why would the Minnesota Vikings want to get a quarterback that another team decided they did not want as their starter? Well, for one, Arizona is in a very different spot from the Minnesota Vikings. Arizona last year decided not to continue playing Kyler Murray and instead to go with Jacoby Brissett so they could get a very high draft pick. And if you look at their offseason, they've done basically nothing outside of sign a running back and bring in Gardner Minshew. They have signaled really from space that team is going into a full rebuild, and it wouldn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense for the Arizona Cardinals to keep a quarterback that could get them to 7, 8, or 9 wins if they were going to have an entire total rebuild and plan on drafting a quarterback in 2027. So they move on from him. They will stick with backup level quarterbacks for next season, and that opens the door for the Vikings to get a starting level quarterback. So I think that answers why Arizona would move on. Now, why would the Vikings pick Kyler Murray over other potential options? We've seen Daniel Jones signed a pretty crazy contract with the Indianapolis Colts. I don't know if he was ever in the mix for the Vikings because he got somewhere in the ballpark of $44 million per year with the potential upside of $50 million per year. And when you think about it from that lens, also Malik Willis got over $20 million a year. Why Kyler Murray does come down to the price tag versus the player and their performance. The fact that there is offsetting language that allows the Vikings to sign Kyler Murray for $1.3 million makes him the level of not just a backup quarterback. Backup quarterbacks these days are getting $6 to $10 million. We're looking at someone who is getting the level of a quarterback that you would sign from the USFL in terms of the dollar figures for a guy who has been a Pro Bowler 2 times and also had a very strong 2024 season. And after watching the first 5 games of last year, I would also say that he played very well in the first 5 games of last season as well. So for $1.3 million, the fit is exactly right. And we'll talk about the fit offensively and everything else. But with the Vikings cap situation, as you have seen from this offseason, where they have signed essentially no one, no disrespect to James Pierre, the cornerback, but they have essentially spent no money outside of bringing back Eric Wilson and Tavier Thomas and Andrew DePaula, but those have really been their only moves. And as we look at overthecap.com right now, they are under $10 million of cap space and have to be compliant by the end of, I think it's next week or sometime soon, within the next few days. So they didn't exactly have Malik Willis money or Daniel Jones money or even really Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers money to spend if they wanted those guys. So the price tag matters a lot in this case when you're talking about someone that could have the potential to take you to the playoffs, could have the potential to be a quarterback for a longer term for this organization. But even in the short term, and we'll talk about the chances and what the odds are that Murray ends up succeeding and what our expectations are. But for $1.3 million, no matter how much you either do or don't like the style of Kyler Murray or his history before, or some of the things that have been said about him in the past by certain people or certain language that was written in and then taken out of his contract, $1.3 million is very hard to argue with. And should Kyler Murray come to the Vikings and not fit in and struggle in training camp and OTAs and have it not work out, moving on from someone that you signed for the veteran minimum is really not that hard of a thing. I don't expect that to happen, but it's 1 year, it's $1.3 million. You can't ask for a better deal. They signed him for way less than it costs for most running backs on the market for the cheapest positions. In fact, Tavier Thomas, their special teams ace, is going to make twice what Kyler Murray is going to make this season. And thank you, NFL salary cap and the structure of contracts that has allowed this to be possible. I don't know if this is something the Vikings would have done had it cost them $25 or $30 million to get Kyler Murray, but the price allows them to keep 90% of their roster that they had last year together. They've had to move on from Jonathan Allen. They've had to move on from Javon Hargrave. But aside from that, they've found a way to bring back Hawkinson. They found a way to bring back Aaron Jones. They found a way to bring back Eric Wilson. And when you go up and down the squad, if they don't trade Jonathan Grenard, this is basically the same team. And we'll see what happens with Harrison Smith. And if Kyler Murray and his joining the Vikings ends up influencing Harrison Smith to come back. And if he does, again, what's different? It's not going to be a whole heck of a lot on this roster. And this was a team that went 9-8 last year with the 28th ranked expected points added in passing. Now, if we go back, now here's why you do it also. It's not just that the price is right, but it's also that this has been a valuable quarterback when he has had the right circumstances and when he's played well. Now, how that's going to happen is, I think, interesting to talk about how Kevin O'Connell will work Kyler Murray into this offense, how he can work around some of the things that Kyler Murray potentially does not do very well. But in terms of his strengths and his resume, you would be very hard pressed to find too many other quarterbacks who had 2 Pro Bowl seasons, and then in 2024, another season that was successful overall, just from Kyler's standpoint. His team went 8-9, but he performed well in that season. 3,800 yards, 24 touchdowns, 93 quarterback rating, 500 yards rushing in 2024. Try to find somebody that's 28 years old who's had a season like that who ends up available at all. It does not happen very often that you have a quarterback of this caliber become available. And his resume, I think, is very interesting to pick apart because he came into the league and he struggled right away as a rookie, as most rookies do. And then his following 2 seasons had some very, very high moments. He had a 500 season in his sophomore year in which he kind of broke out and looked more like a franchise quarterback. And then in 2021, through about the first half of that season, people were talking about Kyler Murray as MVP of the league. There were very few people who were as exciting and as electric as Kyler Murray. And I think all of us remember the game against the Vikings when Murray threw for 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, also made a couple of big mistakes in that game as well. I seem to remember a Nick Vigil interception that happened, but the scrambling, the playmaking, the downfield passing at that time was exceptional. In 2021, his connection with DeAndre Hopkins, as we saw after they made that incredible trade with the Houston Texans, his connection with DeAndre Hopkins was nothing short of spectacular. Now, that team ended up losing to the Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams in 2021 in the playoffs, and that is his only playoff game. And it's certainly a blemish on the record of Kyler Murray that he did not get his team to the postseason more, but it all requires context. When we look at Murray's career in Arizona, they had a good team, but they had subpar coaching with Cliff Kingsbury. And that doesn't mean Cliff doesn't know offense or isn't effective when it comes to designing an offense. He probably is, and he was good in Washington with Jaden Daniels. But as a head coach and as a front office, they did not put great teams around Kyler Murray. They never had a top 10 defense. Not a single time did they have a top 10 defense. And if you look at the receivers that they've had, I think they expected Marvin Harrison Jr. to be the next DeAndre Hopkins. He has not become that. He's not a separator. He's had a lot of drops, and he's struggled to become a franchise receiver like they thought he was going to be. And if you go back to the 2 years where Murray really struggled, there was a teardown of the roster around him, and receivers got hurt. It was a major struggle for him, and he did not play very well in 2022. And then he tore his ACL, which made that worse. And then he had the ACL recovery and comes back in 2023 and plays okay, but it's just not the same in 2023. So they hire Jonathan Gannon and Drew Petzing. That was in 23. And then in 24, they get a full offseason with him and 17 games. And what you'll find if you look at that season, and Vikings fans saw this, Kyler should have beaten the Vikings in 2024. In fact, his coach doesn't go for a 4th down, which, going back through their tape, was something I noticed quite a few times, that Jonathan Gannon and his game management was not exactly flawless. But if they had gone for a 4th down and converted it against the Vikings, they win that game against the eventual 14-win Vikings. And it took a miraculous comeback for Sam Darnold to beat Kyler Murray that day. You saw a lot of his playmaking and a lot of his accuracy. And also you saw under Drew Petzing a more complete quarterback. And that's really been my observation of the two different Kylers. There is the Kyler that comes into the league and is scrambling all over the place and is making crazy plays and looks like Michael Vick 2.0, and he's throwing it all over the place, but he's not playing in structure a whole heck of a lot. And then there is the Kyler Murray that played for Drew Petzing and Jonathan Gannon in 2024 and into 2025. And well, watching back the tape from 2025, especially these last few days, I've noticed that there are times that he turns down throws. There are times that he tries to do too much and make a play out of something and ends up taking a sack, and that can absolutely be frustrating. But what I noticed is there's a lot more playing on time, there's a lot more playing in structure, and there's a lot more playing under center than he ever did before. So I think what they decided, that group, Gannon and Petzing, was that if they used some of the more traditional type of stuff that's influenced from the Kubiak and Shanahan and Kevin Stefanski, which is where Drew Petzing came from, that they could get more out of Kyler Murray. And I think that they did. I think that they got a more complete quarterback, a more rhythm and timing quarterback, a more under center rollout and play action, which you'll see him do in every game from 2025 and 2024. Those are things that he did not do as much early in his career when he was with Cliff Kingsbury, and probably set him back a little bit as a quarterback. And when you go back through and look at some of the quotes and some of the rumors and conversations about early on, I think there was an element of arrogance from Kyler Murray because he did come in and succeed so quickly playing a certain way. But I also think, and this goes for JJ McCarthy too, that a 23-year-old Kyler Murray who's setting the world on fire, scrambling around and making crazy plays, versus a 28-year-old Kyler Murray who's played in a more complete quarterback type system, who has grown 5 years in his life in terms of his maturity, has a much better chance to play complete quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. And I think over his last, I would say, how many was it with Gannon? 17 in 2024. So that's like 22 games. If you look at his last 22 games, he plays much more like a traditional quarterback outside of the handful of plays where somebody breaks through and he's scrambling. And again, there are times where he tries to do too much. There are times where he passes up somebody open and maybe he doesn't see them over the middle, or maybe he escapes the pocket too quickly when his offensive line broke down. But often those still turn into positive plays with Murray. And I think the big point here in terms of why they would do this is that you can take what he's done recently and you can bring it into the Vikings offense. You cannot bring it into the exact same offense that Sam Darnold ran, because Sam Darnold has a much bigger arm. Not to say that Kyler can't throw it, but he has a much bigger arm and better downfield accuracy and is more consistent standing tall in the pocket, waiting until the last minute that someone gets in his face and letting it rip. So this is not Sam Darnold. In fact, watching him, I feel like he plays a lot more like Kirk Cousins did, where when pressure gets into his face and he's trying to throw with someone in front of your face, he is not as successful, and that is where the height comes in. So the Vikings do have to protect Kyler Murray well. They have to have Aaron Jones back as a pass protector, which seemed to be a really important thing. TJ Hawkinson is back, and that's going to be really big for him because he does like to get rid of the ball quickly. But these are things that Kirk Cousins had problems with, and things that Kirk Cousins also did. Cousins did not love to whip the ball 25 yards down the field into a tight window. And he passed up a lot of those throws, and sometimes it drove Jefferson and KOC crazy, but Kirk was also very accurate and very good when throwing on time, which is what I've seen from Kyler Murray is when he has good timing in the pocket, time to throw, and he needs to hit a 15-yard out or something like that, a 10-yard out, somebody even breaking over the middle. He can do this, a slant. I was just watching this from a game against New Orleans where his receiver runs a slant, and it's 1-2, bang, ball is right there, perfect position to continue to run. So I think that there's a little bit, maybe things that are overstated a touch when it comes to the shortcomings of Kyler Murray and the potential of him filling in to Kevin O'Connell's offense. And a lot of you have asked over and over, hey, how is he going to fit in? What's Kevin O'Connell going to do? Can Kevin O'Connell possibly change his offense around Kyler Murray? And I think that if O'Connell believed it was impossible to fit his offense to Murray, to have, the rhythm and timing thing is very real with O'Connell's offense, and Murray can play within that structure. If he watched all the plays of Kyler Murray and thought, this guy can't play in rhythm, he's just going to take the snap and scramble and run, or he can't throw it at all down the field. If he thought that, I don't think that they would be in on Kyler Murray. I think that they would have been bringing Kirk Cousins back. And this goes to the ceiling. And I think the most important thing when it comes to this is really the ceiling. That if we look at any of the other Vikings options, if we look at bringing back Kirk Cousins, even signing Malik Willis may have had a high ceiling, but what is the percentage chance you get there with so little in terms of a sample size, and you have to spend more money to do it? What is the ceiling of bringing in Aaron Rodgers? Well, it's not that high. It might be squeeze you into the playoffs. It might be the 18th best offense in the NFL, but those guys are either in their late 30s or early 40s and have had Achilles injuries and are not the quarterbacks that they were 5 or 6 years ago. The best case scenario for Kyler Murray is very important in this equation for the Minnesota Vikings. And the best case is that you've found a quarterback that you can have over multiple years and that you can build over multiple years, that you have found your guy. He is 28 years old. If And you could say, well, that's impossible. Another team let him go. Sam Darnold is now the guy for the Seattle Seahawks. Baker Mayfield is now the guy for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jared Goff is the guy for the Detroit Lions. This has happened a lot where good quarterbacks who kind of blow with the wind in terms of their success. If the circumstances aren't great, then they're not great. If the circumstances are really, really good, then it's very possible that they're going to be great. I mean, Kyler Murray falls into that same category. Like, think about the things that were said about Baker Mayfield when he was let go by the Cleveland Browns. He goes to the Panthers and he struggles. Baker's done, right? Baker's never going to be a starting quarterback again. He's just a backup. He's mediocre. He goes to the Rams. He's QB2 and then finds his home with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Why? Because they have Chris Godwin and because they have Mike Evans and because they had a good offense with Liam Cohen for him. That sounds right. Why did Sam Darnold succeed with the Vikings and the Seattle Seahawks? Well, Jackson Smith-Njigba and Clint Kubiak and KOC and Justin Jefferson, right? These good setups with good franchises who have maximized quarterbacks like Tampa Bay and like Seattle and like Minnesota. Well, Kyler Murray, and I could say this for Detroit, it's a little bit different, but when Jared Goff was sent to Detroit, everyone wrote him off. They said it's over for Jared Goff. He'll never be a good quarterback again. He's done. And instead, Jared Goff becomes the franchise quarterback for Detroit. And yeah, he hasn't won a Super Bowl, but man, he's been close a couple of times and they've had good enough seasons to be knocking at the doorstep. That might be getting a little bit far down the road with Kyler Murray. But if we're talking about what the upside of this is, that is the upside that we've seen from at least 3 different quarterbacks who were highly drafted, who ran into difficult times and circumstances, and then found their right home. The upside for 2026 is also quite high. When you look around the NFC North, you see teams that are very good, but no teams that are perfect. The Detroit Lions offseason has been a center that they needed, losing their left tackle and losing their other starting running back of their duo to bring in a much worse running back, Isaiah Pacheco, who, I think has been good, but has also been banged up and has regressed as a Kansas City Chief. That's their offseason. They haven't done a heck of a lot more, and they've lost some players in Detroit. Still a really good team, but not perfect. The Chicago Bears have not done anywhere near as much as I thought, or maybe they thought. They've lost DJ Moore, they've lost Tremaine Edmonds, and they've replaced them with a couple of guys, but they didn't make a big Max Crosby trade. They didn't do something absolutely crazy. They went and, they ended up just signing some filler type of players that are good. They lost Kevin Byard, though. They lost Nashawn Wright, who was big for them. They're not perfect. They're on the rise, but they're not a perfect team. And then the Green Bay Packers, who just signed Javon Hargrave. That's a good move for them. And they've also lost a lot of talent. And it's not clear when Micah Parsons is coming back. And they lost Romeo Doubs, who was a guy for them. He wasn't Randy Moss, but he was good. Or he wasn't Donald Driver, say, but he was good. And they haven't really replaced him either. So all these teams have their flaws. And all the quarterbacks have their flaws. Jared Goff struggles under pressure. Caleb Williams still isn't accurate. Jordan Love is up and down and is coming off some injuries from last year, but he's very hot and cold in his career. So you bring in Kyler Murray, who at times in his career has been a clear top 12 quarterback in the NFL, and you hand him the best set of circumstances that he has ever had. Other than when he had DeAndre Hopkins, look at the other wide receivers. I mean, AJ Green, an aging AJ Green, he had at one point. Look at the other receivers. There isn't another receiver who even touches what Jordan Addison has been for the Minnesota Vikings. Trey McBride, really good. And TJ Hawkinson at times in his career has been as good as Trey McBride, or at least in his ballpark. I don't think he's quite to the same level as McBride, but is a very solid player. And then you have the best wide receiver in the NFL, who even made Carson Wentz look good at times. And Justin Jefferson, before JJ McCarthy got here, career, when anyone threw him the football, had 109 quarterback rating. I think Kyler Murray should be able to work with that. And if it clicks and you brought back Brian Flores and you brought back a lot of this defense, they're going to have to do something with the defensive tackles, but the corners are back. You got a little more depth there. We'll see what happens at safety, but you have Van Ginkel. As of this moment, you've got Jonathan Grenard still, unless I've missed something. I do notice my phone's been going off a little bit here with notifications, so unless I missed a Jonathan Grenard trade, they've still got him. They have a complete defense from top to bottom that has been maximized by Brian Flores and gives you a chance any given year to be in the top 10, which Kyler Murray has never had before. So if everything clicks, if every single thing clicks, if Kyler Murray plays as a complete quarterback like he did from 2024 through the first 5 games of this last season, and the running game is at least good, and I think they need to draft a running back. More running backs today came off the board. Rashad White and Emmanuel Wilson. Those guys found other homes. So that's going to be a question. But if they can have an average to above average running game with some improvement in the coaching staff, in the scheme, maybe give the ball to Jordan Mason a few more times. If the offensive line can stay healthier. No offensive line stays 100% healthy for the entire season. So depth is still important. And right now they don't have it, but they need it. The health of the line, when it was good, when they were very good up front. And there's questions. Can Blake Brandel be the starting center? It looks like that's going to be the case. Can Darrisaw come back to be Christian Darrisaw again? Can Brian O'Neill stay healthy and continue to play at his level? Can Donovan Jackson take a step forward? There are questions. But if the offensive line plays an above average level, if you have an average to above average running game, and the wide receivers are maximized by Kyler Murray with his accuracy. Now, he's not going to throw the ball 50 yards through the air every other play. So there will have to be adjustments. It will have to be more longer drives at times. There will be times where Justin Jefferson breaks open and Kyler Murray is already scrambling. So you go, well, man, he was open. You had him there. But when you look at his results throwing to DeAndre Hopkins, there's evidence that he can push the ball to a number 1 wide receiver. He just hasn't had one in a very long time. So if everything clicks, if Murray is playing well, if Kevin O'Connell, which we'll get to, is getting along well with Kyler Murray, and they're on the same page, if the running game is at least what it was last year, but maybe better, if the offensive line is some version of what it was last year when it was healthy, if it works out with Justin Jefferson the way it did with DeAndre Hopkins, and Jordan Addison can bring more to this offense, and he clicks with TJ Hockenson the way that he did with Trey McBride, this team has the potential to win the NFC North. And I have not checked in the last few minutes if FanDuel has updated its division odds. Maybe they have with the Vikings. No, they have not yet with the Vikings getting Kyler Murray. Well, let me refresh and see if they've done it yet. We'll keep an eye on that. Plus 600 going into this day. I'm curious if that changes now that Kyler Murray is here. But if everything clicks into place with Kyler Murray, this is why you get him. It could be very, very good. You can win the division. You can win 11 games. You can host a playoff game. You can at least imagine that happening and not think that you're also imagining, unicorns and spaceships or whatever. Like, it's not pie in the sky. It's not pure dreaming and imagining. You can see it happening if some things click into place. And it's not that hard, especially for this franchise, to see it happening because it's happened so many times before. And I was thinking about this as Kyler Murray joins this team and how, once upon a time you had Randall Cunningham, or once upon a time you had Jeff George, or even Sam Darnold most recently, or Sam Bradford before that. What do those guys all have in common? When the Vikings got them, what did people think about them? Randall Cunningham coming out of retirement. Well, this guy's done. He's just going to be a backup quarterback. Goes on to lead one of the best offenses that's ever existed in 1998. Jeff George, where was his reputation? What did people think of Jeff George when he arrived with the Minnesota Vikings? He goes 8-2 and wins a playoff game for them. Probably could have won another one if they had had a better defense or hadn't faced off with the greatest show on turf. What did people say about the Sam Bradford trade, which I think had he stayed healthy in 2017 would have really worked out. But even then, his performance as a Minnesota Viking was way above what it was with the St. Louis Rams and even the Philadelphia Eagles. Sam Bradford turned around the narrative about Sam Bradford. Everyone had said, oh, this guy just stole a bunch of money from his teams. He's a bust, etc. But the last impression you had of Sam Bradford in the NFL was this guy's a really good quarterback, right? So what happened? What is similar? And then Sam Darnold, when he arrived, sees ghosts. This guy can't play. He's a bust. He'll start the first 3 games and then they'll bench him, right? That was the expectation for Sam Darnold when he came to the Vikings. He wins 14 games. Why does it keep happening? I don't think that it's because the universe actually is a simulation and we all live in a flat circle. I don't think that's it. I can't be 100% sure, but I don't think that's it. What I think it is there's similarities along the way for every one of these quarterbacks. One is that they're talented. That's a place to start. The pure talent of the player. Kyler Murray is one of the most dynamic playmaking quarterbacks in the NFL of the last 10 years. He has 3,000 rushing yards for his career. He, on tape, even as recently as the first couple of games of last year, makes spectacular plays at times. Plays that no other quarterback outside of Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen is possibly capable of. Free runners at him that he's dodging and running away from and getting 30 or 40 yards down the sideline. You just don't see that from very many quarterbacks. His talent, his accuracy, the way that he throws the football in the areas inside 15 yards, it matters since a very high percentage of throws in the NFL are under 15 yards. This has been thrown in his face, I know, over and over. Well, is EPA throwing over 15 yards, which someone has to catch it for EPA, by the way. But, throwing to this area or that area, if you are one of the top 10, which he is since 2020 in completion percentage, he's one of the top 10 in on-target percentage. He is one of the top 10 in the best way in terms of bad throw percentage, if you look that up on Pro Football Reference. So someone who can throw the football with this degree of accuracy, who can make plays like this, you usually only get them at the top of the draft, right? And that's what he has similar to all these other quarterbacks that have succeeded with the Vikings that are retreads that have been somewhere else and failed somewhere else. They're all top pick talents. Jeff George, one of the great arms in history. I mean, Sam Darnold, same deal, big arm. And Sam Bradford, a brilliant thrower and operated incredibly well with his footwork and his timing and all those types of things, right? That's number one, and Kyler checks that box. How about the wide receivers? A major reason for the reclamation project success of the Minnesota Vikings time and time again is the wide receivers. Justin Jefferson. I mean, even Kirk Cousins was coming off of a 7-9 season with the Washington football squad and ends up coming to Minnesota and having some of his best years with Justin Jefferson in 2020, 2021, 2022, as we saw from the way that, how about that Buffalo game where Justin Jefferson puts on one of the great shows that we've ever seen from a wide receiver that day going against Stephon Diggs, who also certainly helped. So I haven't even included Kirk in this because he was more of a franchise quarterback when he got here, but his team let him go and he still performed at a very, very high level for the Vikings over, several seasons. But Sam Bradford, when did he ever have a Thielen and Diggs? And Sam Darnold, whose best receiver he'd ever had been Robbie Anderson, and then he comes here and it's Justin Jefferson, and goes to Seattle and it's Jackson Smith-Njigba. There's a lot of connection there with the retread quarterback who ends up turning it around with having great weapons. And also from a coaching perspective, if we go back, Denny Green, someone who was on Bill Walsh's coaching staff and always elevated his offenses, had success with those veteran quarterbacks. And then even with Sam Bradford, it got a little messy there with Norv Turner and Pat Shurmur. But ultimately, Pat Shurmur came from that West Coast world too and had a lot of success with Case Keenum in 2017. A good offensive mind, somebody that probably shouldn't have taken a head coaching job in New York where it was a disaster for him. But Pat Shurmur knew how to call a game. And even with Kirk Cousins and the Kubiaks and the Stefanski, and then here with Kevin O'Connell, which brings us to what does Kevin O'Connell need to do to succeed with Kyler Murray? This is the fundamental question for the Minnesota Vikings. This is a huge challenge for Kevin O'Connell. And I was reading what Mike Silver wrote about it yesterday, and he compared it to doing a backflip off of a high jump or something into a pool, whatever it was, with Kyler Murray being his maybe biggest challenge yet. I think it starts with the connection personality-wise between Kevin O'Connell and Kyler Murray. Because a lot of folks have had a lot of things to say about Kyler Murray and his personality. And I think some of that goes back to Cliff Kingsbury, though I found it being interesting that one of the teams that was rumored to want to talk to Murray about his future beyond 2026 was the Los Angeles Rams, where I believe Cliff Kingsbury is on that staff. So there's that. Also, when it came to the relationship with Drew Petzing and Jonathan Gannon, by everyone that I've talked to about Kyler Murray, that relationship was solid. I don't know that they were best friends dancing across the field together, but I think that when people grow and improve, you see that, or when they get personalities they gel with, you see that sort of thing connecting better. That just because it didn't work at times, or just because there was immaturity at times years ago, doesn't mean that's what's happened recently, or that's what will happen here. And with O'Connell, the one thing that I think you could say is his superpower, and this was certainly tested last year, and I think there was the limits were pushed by O'Connell, and there was frustration that was shown, maybe that we'd never seen before. But with all of his other quarterbacks, we have to go back to, when it comes to the personality of his quarterback and how Kevin O'Connell operates with his QB1, go back to 2022. Think about where the Vikings were, the locker room was, Mike Zimmer was with Kirk Cousins. It is very easy now to look back and go, oh yeah, Kirk O'Chains. Right, Kirk. He had everybody in the locker room, putting their chains on him, and they loved him and everything else. And I was there when he tore his Achilles, and I talked to Brian O'Neill right after Kirk tore his Achilles, and O'Neill was so emotional that he couldn't even really talk to the media after that because he was so upset about Kirk getting hurt. That was not stuff that we heard about Kirk when Mike Zimmer was his coach. We did not hear about the leadership. We didn't hear about him giving speeches in meetings, or we didn't hear about them celebrating the way that they did on a plane with Kirk. We didn't see the connection with the teammates. And then when KOC is his coach, we did. And it was clear that O'Connell connected with Kirk on a personal level and was also able to push him forward into more of a leadership role than he had ever had in the NFL. It was no longer after KOC got here, Kirk just works here. That was not how it was when he was under KOC. And I also think that you saw that in the Netflix documentary. You saw that connection between those two. And I thought that the fans in 2022 and 2023 connected with Kirk much more too, because they saw much more of his personality, his competitiveness, his toughness, his love for the game. And I'm not saying that KOC did that for him. I think he brought it out in a better way. Like, that was all there, but a lot of it was quelled by how much Mike Zimmer didn't like his contract. And I think that he limited Kirk as a leader because he never supported him and never had his back. Well, I think KOC with any quarterback is going to have their back. And we've seen that over the years. In fact, if there's been an issue, I actually think it's been KOC's overbelief in his quarterbacks. If we go through his history, I mean, even think about Jaren Hall, like believing that Jaren Hall was ready to start, or how often they threw the football when Nick Mullins was in there. That's overbelief in your quarterback. There's a couple of games that they might win if they just hunker down and run the ball. He believed too much in Josh Dobbs at times and threw the ball too much with Josh Dobbs. And I would say that for last year with Carson Wentz as well. You look at that Pittsburgh game, you look at the Philly game, and you go, why do you think that Carson Wentz can throw the ball this much? Why? Because he believes in his quarterbacks. And with Sam Darnold, he was also a guy that showed up here not ever really being considered a leader. not ever really being thought of as someone that all of his teammates would pick up on their shoulders. But when you watch some of the behind the scenes stuff, you watch some of the mic'd up stuff, and the way that he talked with Sam Darnold, always super positive, always pumping him up, always having his back with us in the media. How about after some very tough games for Sam Darnold against Jacksonville, against Los Angeles, in the middle of that 2024 season, you never saw Kevin O'Connell break with Sam Darnold. Now, you did a little bit last year with JJ McCarthy, and I think that he was tested with JJ McCarthy because McCarthy was just not ready to play in the NFL. And I think that was really difficult for Kevin O'Connell because he wanted to run his offense, because he wanted McCarthy to be that guy so badly. But even then, early in the season, when people were saying, did you soft bench him? KOC was very defensive of that with JJ McCarthy. And even still putting it out there that this is going to be a competition to Tom Pelissero, I think even then he's trying to have JJ McCarthy's back, even though we all know this is not a competition. So does Kyler Murray respond well to Kevin O'Connell having his back? And how do they communicate on a level with the offense? Because I found it to be very, very interesting that Daniel Jones was doing an interview early in last season where he's just playing great for the Indianapolis Colts. So of course the question is, hey, Daniel Jones, why are you suddenly playing great for the Indianapolis Colts, right? And one of the things that he cited was he said that he had never had preparation. And I know he didn't play in a game, but he went through weeks and weeks of preparation with Kevin O'Connell. He said that he had never had preparation like when he worked with O'Connell ever before in his career. And he said that it changed how he approached the game with the Indianapolis Colts. So when you think about that, when you think about even a quarterback who had been in the league for multiple years with Brian Daboll, who was a coach of the year at one point, I'm not sure he deserved it in 2022, but he was the coach of the year and he won a playoff game with Brian Daboll. And yet he's still saying with Kevin O'Connell, I had better preparation than I've ever had before. If you are a veteran quarterback, if you've been around, if you know what you're doing, and you speak the language of Kevin O'Connell, I think it's going to work for you. And this also goes to best case scenario, because worst case scenario is that Kyler Murray doesn't want to have a deep connection with his coach and he wants to play the way he wants to play. Now, I don't see that on tape from 2024 and 2025. I don't see a quarterback just going rogue and doing whatever he wants and I'll just make whatever play. I don't see that. And I'm sure now that Murray is a Minnesota Viking, a lot of you guys are going to go back and actually watch those games. And I think if you watch the first game of the year in 2025 against New Orleans, the game against Carolina, the game against San Francisco, what you're going to say, and he got whipped by Seattle. Most people did. Most people did this year. But when you watch those games, I think that if you actually take the time, just go back and watch those games. Now that Murray's your quarterback, you're going to come away with the conclusion, oh, that looks a lot more like stuff that the Vikings do than you would have thought. I do think there's adjustments that have to be made. There are throwing lanes that have to be created for Kyler Murray. There are things with over the middle looks that if he's facing a deep zone, you won't see him force it into a window. Like the guy has to be pretty open for him to throw it, or he's just going to scramble, or he's going to check it down. Now, that's not the worst thing in the world, because a lot of his checkdowns, and this is the thing that I found in my research, is that Murray's success rate, which is one of those stats that can be a little tricky because, you know, an explosive 30-yard pass can be the same as a 7-yard first down, but his success rate has been very high in the NFL. It's one of the top 10 in the NFL since 2020. And the reason for that is because he consistently completes passes and he will take the check down and he's not always going to force it into coverage. But I do think that there's going to be a give and take with Kevin O'Connell of, well, what is he really comfortable with? What really works for Kyler Murray and throwing the ball and seeing the field? And what is he most comfortable with? Now, when Sam Darnold got here, that was also a major conversation with him. And this is one of the things that frustrates me a little bit because 2023 offense and 2024 offense for the Vikings are quite different. And sometimes you'll just, KOC doesn't adjust anything. It's like he most certainly did with those 2 years because Kirk Cousins was throwing a lot in the middle of the field and a lot underneath and a lot of checkdowns. And he wasn't taking very many shots down the field. And KOC loved the way he was playing quarterback. And then Darnold came in and said, and it seemed like Kirk didn't want to take hits in the same way that he had. And with Sam Darnold, he was hanging in the pocket forever. And he does this with Seattle too. Hang in there, wait till the guy gets open, hang, throw it last minute, get drilled. That's not going to be Kyler Murray. So there's going to have to be give and take on what do you see well? What do you do to prepare for these games? What are you most comfortable with? Do you like those rollouts from underneath center, which Kyler started doing a lot more over the last 2 years? But if there's anybody in the NFL and you go through all the coaches and you were drafting all the coaches that you could say had the right demeanor to handle a quarterback whose personality might be a little bit different. Now, I'm sure some of you will say he can't possibly adjust the offense because he didn't for Josh Dobbs. I think that people can learn and grow. And I also think it was Josh Dobbs who showed up in the middle of the season. They will have an opportunity with Kyler Murray to now start from March 12th. And it probably started today. In fact, I would guarantee that it started today because Kyler Murray came to meet with the Vikings. Do you think that they just talked about Lake Minnetonka and the Mall of America and the Stone Arch Bridge? They probably talked a lot of football. They probably talked about how this is going to look if they're going to design an offense for Kyler Murray. That doesn't mean it's going to work. I just think that if you were drafting coaches for somebody designed for Kyler Murray, Kevin O'Connell would be fairly high on that list, and it gives him the best chance to succeed. So as we go through, why are they doing that? That's the question we've been asking for the last 45 minutes. Why are they doing it? That is another reason, is that Kevin O'Connell probably looks at Kyler Murray and says, I can work with that. I can make that work. And now it's on him because I'm not guaranteeing that it will. I'm saying he's got the best chance or one of the better chances. Probably you'd give Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan and so forth, maybe a couple other coaches, a little better shot. But in terms of the personality, the energy that guy brings, the players consistently voting Kevin O'Connell as an A or A+ head coach. I mean, it says a lot about how the players are able to connect with him. Also, this is a locker room that has a lot of leaders and a lot of communicators and a lot of players who have won games before, maybe not Super Bowls, but Aaron Jones has won a lot of games. TJ Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson and Brian O'Neill, like they've played a lot of football in their careers. There's a lot of pros that he's coming into in this locker room who don't necessarily need somebody to hype up the boys. They need someone to throw the ball. They need someone to win them games. They don't need someone to slap them on the butt and say, great job, man, or whatever. They don't need a cheerleader. They don't need somebody in the huddle that gives the biggest speech. Let's go win one for Tarkenton. Like they need someone who goes and plays, right? And that's what they're looking for in Kyler Murray. So I think some of that stuff can be a little overstated sometimes, but I also believe that this is a good test case for Kevin O'Connell because he's reached a fork in the road as a head coach where you've drafted a quarterback that has not worked out to this date. And we'll get to JJ McCarthy in just a moment. You've drafted a quarterback that has not worked out. You've let go a Super Bowl winning quarterback. You've had offenses. You also let go. I mean, Kirk did not succeed in Atlanta, but a pretty good quarterback there as well. You've had opportunities in different seasons to take your team deep into the playoffs, and you haven't gotten there. And you've had some success, and you've had some failure as the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, and you've had a very good culture, but you haven't gotten to the point that everyone needs you to get to. And when you go back through the history of coaches for the Minnesota Vikings, they've had a lot of good ones. Mike Tice won a lot of games. Denny Green is, I think, one of the best coaches, if I say of all time. Everyone's going to throw, well, no, he's not as good as this guy or that guy. I mean, look at the success that Denny Green had and is one game away, one field goal away from reaching the Super Bowl. Look at how long he continued to succeed with different quarterbacks and so forth. I'd put Denny Green up there as one of the better coaches in the NFL during his time. And you have Mike Zimmer, who won a lot of football games and especially early on turned around the team that was just floundering and ends up getting to the playoffs, to the NFC Championship. There's a standard there that's been set that also when it's not reached, the Wilfs have made decisions to move on. Now, I think that O'Connell is a little bit different because the culture matters a lot. The way that the organization is viewed, the fact that, a guy comes here and wants to sign here, and that's happened so many times. Guys sign extensions here. The free agents want to come to the Vikings. You see that a lot. It all connects back to O'Connell because where they were under Mike Zimmer at the end of his tenure was not very good. So that's, to me, a major factor, I'm sure, for ownership. But you know what the biggest factor is winning. And you could say that the Vikings ownership has missed the boat on some times where they could have tanked and could have gone to the bottom and they should have rebuilt at this time and they kept trying to squeeze out every last drop. But one thing that you have to admit is that the Wilfs want to win. They want to win. That they've fired coaches who have not won in the playoffs or not reached the playoffs over multiple seasons. They have invested incredible amounts of money on the roster, which is probably the main reason there's been no free agency for them this year. You've kind of spent all of the money over the last couple years, but they were leading the NFL in spending over the last 3 years, I think. So this ownership has spent. They care a lot about the fans. They care a lot about winning. They have created the best environment, the best facility, the best stadium, all those things. If you don't reach the playoffs and you don't win, then they have been shown to be willing to make a change. So I think it's an excellent test case for Kevin O'Connell to answer the question that everyone's been asking really since last year probably is, can you design your offense the right way for your quarterback? Can you fit your offense to the quarterback? Can you sort of play to win the game, not play to win the game the way you want to win it? Sometimes it's defense and field position. Can you work with a quarterback who has this kind of different personality? It's a good test case because Kyler Murray's good enough to win with. And if you can't get there, if you can't be racing for the division at the end of the season, if you can't be pushing into the playoffs, then maybe you are looking at saying, I don't know, you got to do something else. You got to tear it all down and move on or something. I don't think that's a good idea. I think when you get a coach this level, that you keep working through it and you let this person improve and grow and so forth. But it feels like, based on this team's history, that here we are sort of at the precipice. Like this is either going to go one way or the other. It's going to be his greatest act, or maybe second greatest if Sam Darnold is number one, but it might be his greatest to work with Kyler Murray, or it's not going to work out and you're going to be looking around going, what to make of the franchise now? Because the gap between a successful season with Kyler Murray and an unsuccessful season is absolutely enormous. This season could be, we are talking about old Purple Insider covering the NFC Championship game. I don't think it's that crazy to be saying that. Or we could talk about next year, Purple Insider covering a coaching search and a quarterback search. That's how wide the gap is of the situation with Kyler Murray. But it makes sense to go with him rather than put all of that into a Kirk Cousins, a Daniel Jones, a Malik Willis. You're putting it into someone who has had success in the past. So that's the why of Kyler Murray with the Minnesota Vikings. And I continue to refresh FanDuel. Just I'm very curious if the line moves now that they've got Kyler Murray. Or maybe it won't. Maybe it won't move off plus 600 right now for the Vikings to win the division because they were already assuming that Kyler Murray was going to be a Minnesota Viking anyway. Let's get to what it means for JJ McCarthy. They're going to say it's a competition. They're going to say they want a competitive quarterback room. That's probably what Kevin O'Connell will say time and time again. From day one of OTAs, I expect Kyler Murray to be QB1, and I don't expect that to change unless the season goes off the rails, which, by the way, a $1 million contract for 1 year does allow you to, pull out the hook anytime you want to. If you start 2-4 and you love what you've seen from JJ McCarthy, you could just say, we're going to go with McCarthy. And you could trade Kyler Murray, or you could just bench him or whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, you're talking about, you're talking about $1 million. It's not like you've made this huge investment. If you don't like what you see, you can always go to the other guy. I will say, to the ends of the earth, I think that this is the best thing that could have happened to JJ McCarthy. I think that from what we saw last year, he is far away from being a franchise quarterback. But I also think that McCarthy has flashed everything that it takes to be a franchise quarterback someday, or at least an above average starting quarterback in the NFL. Franchise quarterback may have a little bit of a different connotation because you think Joe Burrow or something. So he's probably not Joe Burrow. But when we can point to certain moments, when we could see his progress in 2024 camp, his first impression to the Vikings was so good. When we see his first impression in Chicago of having a tough game and battling through it and giving them a chance to win and making plays. We see his scrambling ability, his game against Detroit, where he was able to use his legs and also throw the ball well enough in that game to get a big win within the division and get them back into the race. We saw it in a final drive against Chicago at home that should have given them a win. We saw it against Dallas, which I thought was by far the best game that JJ McCarthy had played as a professional football player. It was 4 quarters. He was pretty accurate that game, made plays out of structure, had some spectacular throws, really drove the victory in that game. But I also think that there were so many instances of immaturity, and I don't mean in a way about his actual him as a person, or I don't mean off the field, or I don't mean anything by immaturity. I just mean not fully ready to be a starting quarterback with a franchise's fate on his shoulders. That's what I mean. I don't mean being, acting like a jerk or something. I don't mean that. I just mean there were too many instances of decision making that didn't make sense for why the ball was being thrown in certain places or why decisions were being made with the football. I think that the pressure and the criticism was shocking to JJ McCarthy because he had never had that before. And he made reference to it when we had the last conversation with him, the last press conference. He made reference to how often we had asked him about it, how often that we had said, hey, how are you going to deal with losing when you've never really lost before? I think it hit him like a ton of bricks. And you can go up to that podium every day and say how confident you are and say you're doing fine and everything else. He was not doing fine. I think it was really, really hard on him to deal with something that he had never seen before. But being the age that he is, this is something that you learn from. You have now seen how hard this league is. You have now seen how you have to deal with the things that come your way and that hit you throughout a season. You've also maybe had to learn that if you are not the most coachable or you can't operate the entire offense, that they will go get someone else. And that is the harsh reality of the National Football League, is that they do not wait for you. And the Minnesota Vikings and their franchise cannot wait for you. They cannot sit around and say, well, maybe let's just hope and dream and pray that JJ McCarthy figures it out. And that is a really tough but important lesson to learn in the NFL too, that there isn't going to be excuses made for you. And I know that fans have spent a lot of time this offseason trying to dig through Pro Football Reference and sort the right way or whatever to try to make it look like McCarthy had a good season last year. He did not. And the organization was not going to sit there and say, oh, well, let's just pray to Roger Goodell and the football gods that JJ McCarthy figures all the things out that he has to learn. He has to figure out how to run a complete offense, an NFL offense, not one that is dumbed down for him. He has to learn how to deal with the ups and downs, even within a game where he was emotionally way high or way too low at times, coming off the field looking very frustrated or jumping around like a maniac when anything went right for him. That's not something that pro quarterbacks can do because you just wear yourself out. He has to work on throwing the football accurately. He has to work on throwing it with touch. He has to work on timing. He has to work on understanding that you can't see where things are going to be. You have to imagine them. You have to see it in your head beforehand. You have to hit the back foot and throw to a spot and believe in it. You can't wait until Justin Jefferson gets open. You have to throw it to a spot and he will get there open. These are things that take time for a pro quarterback. And I feel very bad for JJ McCarthy that he never got the opportunity to develop the way that most quarterbacks do. Most quarterbacks come in with Sam Darnold ahead of them that are drafted 10th overall or in that range. Alex Smith ahead of them, for example. Aaron Rodgers ahead of them, for example. Guys that are not first overall picks. Carson Wentz ahead of them with Jalen Hurts, a second-round draft pick. I mean, heck, even Tyler Shuck, who was 25 or 26 or something, sat behind Spencer Rattler. That guy was 5 years older than JJ McCarthy or whatever and sat behind Spencer Rattler until he was ready to start. Most quarterbacks who get drafted have that opportunity unless they're thrown right into the wolves. But even Drake May didn't start right away. And Jaden Daniels, look at the offense they ran from the beginning, and he was also 24 years old when he started. Bo Nix really struggled at the beginning. He was 24 years old. Most quarterbacks get a chance to have some development time. And I think the Broncos probably didn't even have high expectations for Nix's first year as a rookie, and he ended up making the playoffs. But even then, they were taking it slow with him right off the bat. So McCarthy just didn't get that. And that injury with the meniscus set him way back. And then the franchise did him a disservice by making him the starting quarterback last year. And I had read from Diana Rossini put in one of her articles that the Vikings felt like they had to start him or they might lose him. And I thought, man, that seems like a guy who needs to not start then. If that's the way you think, that means he needs that more time on the bench. But they did him a disservice, putting him in over his head with a veteran locker room that all expected to win, that was wearing shirts saying more is required, that Brian O'Neill's up there saying, I'll do anything it takes just to get to the playoffs. I mean, these are guys who hear the clock ticking of their careers, and you put it all on a kid who was not ready. And that was a big mistake by them last year. Proved out to be a big mistake. And because of his personality and because of his energy and his enthusiasm and his work ethic, they thought he'll be okay. We'll guide him through it. But there's no preparing for the ups and downs of the NFL. You can look at the roller coaster from the side and go, yeah, that doesn't look too bad. But when you're on it, you want to throw up. And that's what happens every single year in the NFL. And someone like JJ McCarthy, who didn't even have that development season and didn't have any adversity really in college, was not prepared for it. So now what he gets, and who knows how long it will last. It's possible that JJ McCarthy's playing by week 3. It's possible that he's playing by week 8 again. But even in that scenario, and I want to make a pie chart of different scenarios and think about the percentages with Kyler Murray here. But even in the scenario where he plays week 4 and takes back over from Kyler Murray for whatever reason, injury, or maybe they start 0-3 or something and they're trying to just throw a Hail Mary. Even that, I think, would be really good for him to have an offseason that's healthy, to have an offseason with no pressure, to have games where he could be QB2, where he's preparing and he's ready and he's practicing, but he's not got all the pressure and all the criticism that comes down on your head throughout a season and everybody looking at you saying, hey, man, you're wasting my career or my numbers. From Justin Jefferson never said it, but it didn't matter if he said it or not. Justin was as enthusiastic and supportive and whatever as it could be for JJ McCarthy, but he knows what Justin Jefferson and everybody else is thinking when he's airmailing passes. And you can see at times where he's trying to just guide the ball. Just please get it to Justin Jefferson, right? That just says to me wasn't ready and needs more time behind the scenes to be ready the next time. And there will be a next time. I mean, guys don't play 17 games that often. Kyler did in 2024. Last year's got a foot injury that he probably would have played 12 or 13 games, but, they decided to tank. But, I mean, somebody falls on Kyler's ankle. He hits his hand on somebody's helmet, whatever it might be, and JJ McCarthy's back in the game. He will play again in the NFL. I promise you he will. And I think if you're a huge JJ McCarthy fan and you have a number 9 jersey, I think that you should be looking at this through a long-term lens. I know everything is, I want it right now. I want to see more, I don't want to see Kyler Murray. I don't want to see another retread. I want to see, the guy that they drafted. I want to see the kid that was promised, the golden boy. I want to see them give him every single chance in the world. I promise you, I think this is better. And there's so many quarterbacks in NFL history who have needed more time. And I definitely think he's one of them to develop. This, in my mind, is a good thing for JJ McCarthy to get to the point where he is competing in practice with Kyler Murray every day, but also with himself to prepare himself for when the next opportunity comes. And then we'll learn everything we need to know about JJ McCarthy when the next opportunity comes. And the best example that I can use for McCarthy is really Malik Willis, because I know Malik Willis was a third-round draft pick, but if you look at the scouting reports between Willis and JJ McCarthy, there's a lot of similarities. One is the lack of touch on the ball, trying to be too much of a playmaker at times. With Malik Willis was an issue, and with JJ McCarthy was kind of put in a box with Michigan. Not that he didn't make plays out of structure, but was, hey, you're under center, you're running play action, and then, hey, if it's a 3rd and 7, maybe go make a play. Where Malik Willis had too much, I think, freedom to just run around and scramble and so forth. But both of them needed to learn the blend and the balance of how to play in the NFL. And Malik Willis's first impression was super rough. And then he went to a similar type of coach in Matt LaFleur, and he developed and he prepared. And when he got in the game, he was ready. And now he's somebody else's quarterback that they're hoping is a franchise QB. It just shows you once again, it doesn't have to be over just because it did not work out right away. And I think that the whole rookie quarterback contract thing in this instance is just overstated. In a magical, wonderful world, you'd start him again this year and you'd sell, down the road, restructure every contract, and you'd try to sign every player you possibly could. If McCarthy was ready to win right now, you'd love to do that. I mean, and this is a part of the point too. When we talk about, he should be starting, they shouldn't have got out and got Kyler Murray, or, they don't know what they're doing. You don't think they want that? They want that more than anything in the world. They would love to have JJ McCarthy have been the guy. They didn't want to do this. They didn't want to go out and get somebody else's starting quarterback, but they feel like it's the best thing. And I also think it's the best thing for JJ McCarthy by far. I don't believe it's a quarterback competition. I don't think we'll see them doing every other first team rep or something like that. Kyler's going to be the guy, and McCarthy has an opportunity to learn. And then the next time that McCarthy plays, we will find out, is JJ McCarthy a quarterback that could start in the NFL or not? And let's just say that a scenario arises where Kyler Murray plays 10 games, goes 6-4, and then gets hurt, and he's out for the year. Here comes JJ McCarthy. He looks like a different guy. He's commanding the offense. He's smart with the football. Remember, last year he got sacked as many times as Sam Darnold. I mean, he can't get sacked like that. He can't throw interceptions like that. But let's say he's learned that. He's safer with the football. He's playing smart, but he's making plays out of structure, and he's getting the ball to Justin Jefferson, and it's all clicking. Then you can go back to him in 2027 and start planning how you're going to build around him in the future. So this here situation with Kyler Murray gives the Vikings, it gives them avenues. It gives them, and this is what I want to talk about, is all the different potential avenues, and we could pie chart this and try to figure out which one is the most likely. But it gives them an avenue where they get to the end of the year and they go, we just won 12 games with Kyler Murray, and him and KOC are fitting great, and we want to sign him to a 4-year contract extension. We want to do a Daniel Jones or a Sam Darnold type deal with him. And then you're going to revamp your roster and start building through the draft at that point, if Kyler Murray is the guy and they love the way that he played. And that is on the table. With what we've seen through Murray's history, that's possible. And if we're pie charting that as the best case scenario, that they have just found this playmaking, brilliant number 1 overall pick quarterback and they love him and everybody's buying number 1 jerseys and everything else. If that's the case, that's, a good scenario for them, but they'll need to plan for the future to build through the draft around him the way that Detroit did, or the way that Seattle had a lot of success with their recent draft. That has to be the case. because the Vikings, as we know, have gotten very, very little value out of the draft. That would have to change immediately. You start stockpiling draft capital, getting your salary cap right to work around a QB contract. In the pie chart of potential outcomes, I would put that somewhere around a 10 to 15% chance that Kyler Murray plays, maybe even 20. Let's just go 20. Because I think he's played well enough in the past, and I've seen it so many times with this team elevating quarterbacks that everyone said was left for dead. I'll go 20% chance that Kyler Murray plays well enough in 2026 for the Vikings to make the playoffs, even potentially win a playoff game, and they're talking about a longer-term contract with him. I think there's a 40% chance, this is a pie chart, so out of 100, 40% chance that Kyler Murray is just pretty good for the Vikings, and they win 10 games, and they get to the playoffs, and who knows? I mean, sometimes it's about your matchup. Are you traveling? Are you home? But they make the playoffs, they win 10 games, but he was not good enough where you're saying give him a 4-year, $160 million contract or something like that. You're not locking him in. And I don't know what the scenario is with a franchise tag. If this deal comes along with you can't franchise tag him, or transition tag as was just done with Daniel Jones. I'm not sure if anyone's seen the details about that or not, but let's just say they're left with a little bit of a tough decision at that point. I think that's the most likely scenario, is that there's ups and downs. There's a lot of really fun stuff, and there's some frustrating games that you lose and go, I just don't think he's the guy. But then there's other days where you go, I just can't believe what I just saw. He just threw for 380 and 4 touchdowns and beat whoever, right? Like he did against the Rams in 2024. It wasn't 380, but it was a crazy, crazy good game. And they won 41-10 over the Rams with him at the helm. There's high end that's very, very exciting, but there's low end that's very frustrating. And then they're left in a tough spot. That, I think, is the most likely scenario at 40%, is that they're left in a tough spot by Kyler Murray trying to decide, do we want to go forward with him or not? The next scenario is that he just doesn't play that well, and they win 7 or 8 games, and you're clearly moving on from him. Someone else will sign him in free agency, and that's okay, but you're just clearly moving on from Kyler Murray. And then the organization is left in a spot where they're trying to decide, do you go back to McCarthy, or do you draft someone, or you probably try both? In that situation, is KOC still the coach, is certainly a question you'd be asking. But I think that one, if it's 20% best case scenario, he's amazing, you're winning in the playoffs. 40%, you're winning 9 or 10 games, and you're having a really tough conversation at the end. I think that this one is probably another 30%. So we're at 20, 40, and 90%, right? 24, 80%. Yep. I won't screw this up. No, 90%. So it'd be 20% that it's amazing, 40% that it's just pretty good, and then 30. Okay, so 90%. Yeah, 90%. So 30% chance that it's just not that great. And maybe at the end of the year, you're playing JJ McCarthy for a couple games because you're out of the playoff race or something and just trying to see what's still there. I think that's a 30% chance. I think it's a very wide spectrum. And then I think 10% is it just completely implodes. I think Kyler Murray's just way too good for that. But there's always the injury that they could just have an injury and then it didn't mean anything. And I still think the Vikings need to go get another quarterback. Also, maybe Carson Wentz comes back as the QB3 or even QB2, depending on how it goes in in the preseason and training camp. I think they need to have 3 quarterbacks, because if Murray gets hurt, McCarthy's got a history of injuries. They've been to QB3 twice in 4 years with Kevin O'Connell, but I think that's 10. I think that's 10% that it just implodes. It never works. They go 0-4 right off the bat. McCarthy's in, lost season. They're tearing apart the roster. They're going all the way to the bottom. They're aiming for a 2027 high draft pick quarterback. I think that's only 10%, because everything went wrong last year, horrendously wrong last year, and the Vikings still ended up winning 9 games. So I wonder what you guys think the spectrum is, and maybe that's a good way to put this. FanDuel has not changed their odds, still sitting at plus 600. So I guess that's what they think it's going to be for Kyler Murray. So I'm very curious to find out from you guys the spectrum of outcomes, where you think it lands. I've given you my pie chart. I think there's a 20% chance this is amazing. A 40% chance is just pretty good. A 30% chance that it's okay, but it comes up short of expectations. And a 10% chance that it completely blows up in everybody's face. That's kind of how I think of this. So here's what I want to know. We've spent a month debating what quarterback the Vikings should get, how it's going to look, what they're going to do. Is it a good idea? From day one, I've thought this is the best idea. I don't think it's a perfect idea. I think a perfect idea would be to trade a third-round pick for Joe Burrow. But, for some reason, I feel like Cincinnati's probably going to turn that down. That would be a perfect idea. Unfortunately, this is the next best idea because it's the best football player. And if you can't make it work with someone who's got this much talent, well, then I think we've learned everything we need to learn in 5 years, right? If you can't make this work with somebody who is this accurate, this good of a playmaker, has multiple Pro Bowls to his resume, then we're going to know. And even if we want to take it a step further, and I'll get to your comments in a second, because I want to hear what you think is the most likely outcome for Kyler Murray. If you want to give me a stat expectation, give me a stat line, like what you think he'll do stat-wise for the Vikings. I'm curious to hear that. And later on this week, I'm going to have Josh Weinfuss, who covers the Arizona Cardinals for ESPN. He is going to pop onto the show at some point later on this week as well. And, we'll be live again tomorrow because I promised every day in free agency that we would go live. So I'm curious about your expectations, but I do think that Murray is talented enough and has a good enough history that he gives them every opportunity to compete in the NFC North. And that's something that I don't think there's any other quarterback I would have said that strongly about. And I can say that about Kyler Murray. And here's the last thing before I get to the chat is that it has the potential to be very fun. And when we look at the last, let's even go back to 2020, because 2020 is the most miserable season that I've covered, and 2021 is second. Those 2 years were awful. They were filled with coming short of expectations. You knew the team wasn't good enough. Kirk Cousins playing just well enough to never get you a high draft pick and always come back. Super frustrating. The 2022 season, well, it was ultimately not as good of a football team, and eventually everybody sort of came around to that by the end of the season. Like, this isn't really a Super Bowl contending 13-win team. It was fun, and it was memorable. And we can go back to games from that year and say, hey, remember this one, and this one was great, and you walk away from that Sunday like, man, wow, what a football game. I will never forget the game in Buffalo, that's for sure. Back in my hometown, and Jefferson's catch and the post-game podcast that we did after that, where we declared them legitimate Super Bowl contenders and we were wrong, but it made sense to do so. Patrick Peterson's interceptions in the end zone, just unbelievable games, right? We've had many of those over the years for the Vikings. But over the last few years, there's been, other than the Sam Darnold and the 14 wins, and I think it really didn't start to kick up till the second half of that season where you had Seattle and you had Atlanta and you had Green Bay, you had that kind of flurry of these super memorable, very exciting, incredible football games, great quarterback play. But aside from that, there just hasn't been. Chicago week 1 for JJ McCarthy, when after that you would have said, man, and I did, they're going to win 11 games. McCarthy's going to be the guy. They made the right decision. And, we turned out to be wrong, but that's how it felt. That was very exciting. By the following week, you have an injury. It's 5 weeks of misery with Carson Wentz in there. And you're eking out a win against the Cleveland Browns in ugly weather. And the Chargers game was the lowest point in a really long time. And then you have another one of those against the Packers where it somehow got even lower. And even the end of the season, the Dallas game's pretty fun. Didn't mean anything. And what? Max Brosmer, a comeback against the Giants. There's been a real lack of fun. And even we go back to 2023, their win over the 49ers, their win over the Packers, those back-to-back wins until Kirk got his Achilles torn. Those two games were high entertainment, but even 2023, they had some miserable losses. They lost in Philadelphia. They got their tails kicked in that game in 2023. I mean, over the last 5, 6 years, you've had only these little spurts and they've been fleeting. And at least you can say that if it works with Kyler Murray, this will be some of the most entertaining football that you've seen for the Vikings in a long time. And I've had a few people who are OG fans who have reached out and said, maybe he'll look like Fran Tarkenton. And for those fans, he probably will. An undersized guy scrambling around, making plays. And he's not Fran Tarkenton, who's one of the great quarterbacks in NFL history. Certainly not that. But Fran was a heck of a fun time to watch play football. And I think Kyler Murray is as well. And everything I've seen from Arizona fans, I haven't seen "Don't let the door hit you." I've seen a lot from Arizona writers and fans. The organization let this guy down by not building a good enough franchise around him that, again, graded an F for their owner and got poor grades across the entire organization, that they didn't do enough. So now he's got a chance to make it click. And one thing we could say for sure is that it will be filled with intrigue. It will be very fascinating to watch how this plays out, how the offense comes together, how his connection with Justin Jefferson comes together. It will be super, super interesting. So I want to know your guys' reaction and feeling on, yes, Fran had 4 Super Bowl appearances. I know, I'm not saying that he is going to go to the Super Bowl 4 times. They also had the Purple People Eaters. That helped. If the Vikings did have the number 1 defense in the NFL, then maybe he would go to the Super Bowl. But he's not Fran Tarkenton. I'm just saying from a style perspective. Arizona fans, they don't have them. You guys already are being funny right away. Fran was 6 feet tall. Kyler is 5'10". So let's see. AP Carlin says, you think Hitman said he wasn't coming back for another year after developing JJ. So has there been some, I gotta look at Twitter here. I have not looked. In fact, let me do that real quick. I have not looked at all at Twitter since we started talking because there's just been so much here. Let's get some, because I know that Kyler and KOC have been doing a press conference as we've been talking. So Ben Gessling tweets, interesting to hear how Kevin O'Connell talk about how he views a mobile quarterback in light of how teams plan for Justin Jefferson. Said a lot of Jefferson's touches have come on first and second down because teams commit to taking him away in obvious passing situations. A player like Murray, he said, is somebody you definitely have to account for. Okay, that's interesting. Gessling, also quoting O'Connell, says, there was a lot of interest in playing quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, said they cast a wide lens, and I think he means net, and had quite a few conversations with different free agent quarterbacks. That's interesting. Hopefully Ben doesn't mind me reading all of his tweets. This also from Gessling says, O'Connell on signing Kyler Murray, I think we accomplished a goal, which was to add a really talented player with some experience to that room. It's something that I'm really excited about as we set out to elevate the situation and the quarterback room being very competitive. Said he had a, quote, great conversation with McCarthy this week about this offseason. As for the starting QB, he said, I don't believe we have to name one of those currently, which is exactly what I predicted that O'Connell would say. Was just, okay, so we've got also Jaquan Brisker signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. There are no free agents left, by the way. There are absolutely, we've been talking about Kyler Murray for over an hour, but let's be clear, there are no free agents at all for the Minnesota Vikings to sign. They are all off the table. Emily Liker, Star Tribune, said Kyler Murray shared during his first comments to the local media that he and Kevin O'Connell go back to Murray's Elite 11 days, which is high school. Said that O'Connell then in Washington pulled him aside after a combine meeting, and the two have kept in touch ever since. That is one thing about Kyler Murray. There's a Kyler Murray playing for the Vikings as a little kid in youth football. How about that? One thing about Kevin O'Connell is he knows every single quarterback, period. This from Ari Myrov, obviously watching the press conference, says Murray grew up as a diehard Vikings fan and cried, quote, real tears when Brett Favre threw an interception in 2009. Thanks for bringing that up, Kyler. This is from Alec Lewis. Oh, Alec Lewis also pointing that out. Murray on Justin Jefferson. This is from Alec Lewis on Twitter. Says everybody knows what type of talent he is, what type of player he is. I'm just super excited to get to work with him, to get to call him a teammate, to go to war with him. So that's the thought on Justin Jefferson. Well, there you go. So you can definitely say this. Oh, that's right. He was brought in the same draft with Byron Murphy Jr. One thing that you could say is that Kyler Murray is, he did grow up a Vikings fan. He does care about this and clearly wanted to be here because he could have been in other places. Jeremy Fowler, ESPN, says Vikings quarterback situation could mirror the Colts from last year, the veteran and the draft pick bringing the best out of each other in camp. But like with Indy and Daniel Jones, once you start seeing other people, it's tough to turn back. I agree with that. That's right. I totally agree with that from Jeremy Fowler, and he should stick with that. I saw Louis Riddick the other day saying something very similar. Here is from Jordan Schultz on the move. He says, Kyler Murray now joins Kevin O'Connell, who's had success with quarterbacks in Minnesota over the years, including Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, and Josh Dobbs-ish. Call it ish. Murray understands the value of being in Minnesota as Chapter 2 of his NFL career begins. So there you go. There's some of the reaction on Twitter. I had to just check to make sure. Now, after the other night with the Max Crosby deal going awry, and I was sitting here talking, had to make sure that I checked this first before I was buried in the comments section for a few hours. From Kevin Seifert just now, Kevin O'Connell has said that he's wanted to add competition at quarterback. O'Connell tonight on if he views Murray as his starting quarterback, he said, unless I'm confused in any way, shape, or form, I don't believe we have to name one of those currently. So that is where he is going with the quarterback situation, and I think that's totally fine. I don't have any problem with that. I'm sure, he'll get made fun of. Oh, yeah, sure, KOC. Sure, you're going to give... But you don't know how it's going to play out, so why would you name a starting quarterback on March 12th if you have two quarterbacks that you feel like could possibly play? But going back to... Because I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something. Going back to AP Carlin's question, do I think Hitman said he wasn't coming back for another year of developing JJ McCarthy? I don't want to speak for Harrison Smith because he is his own thinker, that's for sure. Knowing Harrison for a long time, I would never say that I know what he's thinking. But I would say that chances to win are a factor. And him coming back last year, he believed that they had a real chance to win. And they didn't, and it was miserable for a very high percentage of the season. I don't think Harrison Smith would want to sign up for, hey, let's just roll the dice with JJ McCarthy and see, because if it goes badly, again, that's a lot that you put into it, a lot with your body, a lot of emotional strain, a lot of physical strain, a lot of investment, a lot of time away from your family to not have a real chance to win. So I do think that would probably be a factor for Harrison Smith. And I've wondered myself, exactly what you're saying, I wondered myself about the timing, and with Harrison Smith telling the organization that he hasn't made his decision yet, I did wonder the same thing that I think you're thinking, which is he waiting to see who the quarterback is before he decides? When you start to look at the defensive roster, it could really use Harrison Smith because Brisker's off the board now. I think every big-time safety has found a home. They could still draft Dylan Thieneman, or Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, but those guys are going to need some development too. Like, that position is pretty much up in the air. And the fact that Harry is considering it, to the point where they're not announcing a retirement for him, does make me think there's a better chance than not that he comes back. Tway says, I still go back and watch highlights from 2022. The Thanksgiving game against the Bills are my favorite. Yeah, you're talking about the Vikings 2022 season, right? I mean, that's in part the reason you have to do that is because they haven't been very fun. They just haven't had a lot of fun. BM says, this year was a slog, skipped multiple games near the end of the year to do better things with my time. Don't regret it once. I mean, yes, right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying, is that even we need to remember, and this was very tough in 2024. We went through this in 2024 with Darnold. And I remember sitting here in actually a slightly different part of the room with my old setup. But I remember sitting in front of you guys and saying, just try to have fun with this season with Sam Darnold. And there was a lot of, no, just wait till JJ gets here. Just don't do too much, Darnold. Wait till McCarthy gets here. And I was pleading, just enjoy the ride. Just enjoy this team because you never know when it can be taken away from you. And I think a lot of fans probably now would go back and say, all right, I wish I did enjoy some of those 2024 games more because after that, how many good football games, how many exciting football games happened between the week 18 of 2024 season and present? 3? I mean, not many. Detroit was one of them. The opener was one of them. But aside from that, how many moments did you really feel great about your team and your franchise? So I think what Kyler gives you is a chance to have fun watching football. You're not going to win every single game, but have fun watching football. Joe with the prediction for Kyler Murray, 3,900 passing yards, 500 rushing yards, 35 touchdowns, 30 pass, and 5 on the ground. I think that's a high-end outcome. And if that happens, I mean, let's think about it this way. With Brian Flores back, and I know that right now the defensive roster could need some help still, but with Brian Flores back, you're going to project a top 10 defense. If it's a top 10 defense and Kyler Murray plays like that, how many wins are you talking? Like I've mentioned that on FanDuel, they're plus 600 to win the division. With that stat line, they can win the division 100%. Hogarth said they had what was described as actively detrimental quarterback play last year. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And look, I will always go back to it's not JJ McCarthy's fault that he wasn't ready. They were the ones that were supposed to assess that. That's their jobs. That's Kevin O'Connell's job. That's Josh McCown. That's the Wilfs. That's at the time, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. It was on all of them to assess how ready JJ McCarthy was, and they missed on that. And they put too much on him right off the bat, said, you're our franchise guy, go get him, Tiger, even though he had no experience at all playing the year before and spent the whole season rehabbing, which is much different than spending a whole season developing. I think it was on them. And certainly if they could do it again, they would have had somebody else playing quarterback last year to develop him, and they would have told the public, if it was Darnold on a franchise tag or whoever, Aaron Rodgers, they would have told the public, we're going to play this the right way with JJ McCarthy, even if it's not what anybody wants outside of the building, then they would have been better for him had he had Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I think the upside to Rodgers last year would have probably been 9 or 10 wins. Well, I mean, I get 9. They already got 9. So probably 10, maybe 11, and losing in the first round of the playoffs. That's probably what the outcome would have been. And then they would have turned it over to McCarthy. But the biggest benefit would have been that they would have been able to develop JJ McCarthy for an entire season. It's not his fault that he didn't get that, but there's no objective way to look at what happened last year and say that was acceptable from a quarterback play performance. In fact, I didn't think it was possible for this team with these receivers and this coach to be as bad at passing the football as they were. Jay says Kyler's stat line does not matter. It's the 26 wins and making the playoffs with a win. What's 26 wins? I think the Vikings finish 11-6 in the regular season with at least one playoff win. Let's go, Kyler. I mean, in my range of outcomes, 11 wins is kind of where you'd put the bar. It's sort of funny when I did my pie chart. I think I was maybe right in between there. There's like it works out amazing. Is 11 works out amazing? I think it is. I think 11 works out amazing because a couple of years ago, what I did is I looked at all the teams that reached the Super Bowl. It was kind of like one of those summer projects to do. I looked at all the teams that made the Super Bowl and I went through and I tried to figure out what does the average Super Bowl team look like? Where do they rank on offense? Where do they rank on defense? Where does their passing game rank? Where does their defensive passing rank and so forth, and tried to figure out and how many wins. And what I came up with is the baseline for reaching the Super Bowl. To be a Super Bowl team, to go into the playoffs and say, we've got a good enough resume. You need to outscore your opponents by 100 points. That was very clear. There's very few teams that made the Super Bowl without outscoring their opponents by 100 points. You need to have at least 11 wins. You need to have at least a top 10 passing game. Running games were a little more up and down, but a top 10 passing game in EPA was very clear. And defense, the bar was a little bit different. Your defense needs to get hot. it was at least in the top 10 against the pass, but there were teams that maybe didn't have that great but got hot in the playoffs. BM says, I really need Jets to remind the league that he is the best wide receiver on earth this year. And, well, there will be times with Kyler Murray, I guarantee you, where Justin Jefferson is open and he does not throw the football. And you go, what the heck, Kyler? Throw the ball. That's going to happen. From watching his tape, that's going to happen. But also when he played with Hopkins and even with Trey McBride, there was so much trust there. Like, they ran wide receiver stuff with Trey McBride. That guy is a wide receiver. I mean, I was just watching a play today where it's third down and let's just say 5. And they've got him in the shotgun and Trey McBride is one-on-one and they put 3 guys to the other side and then he's on one side. And he throws this quick out to Trey McBride that is on the freaking money. Perfect timing, first down, move the sticks, off you go. And you could see that all over the field with Justin Jefferson because Jefferson could get open wherever. I think that he does sometimes have trouble separating on shorter stuff from press coverage. But when it comes to those 10-yard out routes, 8-yard out routes, I mean, Jefferson is basically unstoppable, and Murray throws those incredibly well. This guy, in terms of his accuracy as a thrower, a pure thrower, like, remember when they used to have the quarterback competitions? You know, they would have like the targets they do it in Hawaii. They'd have targets that were flying across the field, and guys would throw and hit them and stuff. They did Dan Marino, and maybe you're old enough to remember that at the Pro Bowl. If Kyler Murray was doing that, he would dominate that drill. I mean, he can just throw pinpoint accuracy time and time again, especially under 15 yards. And there's no reason that Justin Jefferson can't thrive in that environment. Let's see. Hogarth says Vikings last year had an almost Seattle defense. Would have had a better offense if they had even mediocre quarterback play. They have legit shot at meaningful football. Yeah, I don't think they were quite as good as Seattle, but you said almost. I agree with almost. It was the way they were playing heading into the playoffs, the way they were playing at the end of the season against Dallas, against Detroit. It looked like a team that no one would want to play in the playoffs if they had an offense. No one wanted to play that defense last year. And one of the important things is, even though they've lost Hargrave and Allen, they haven't lost anybody else off the defense. All the guys that were there for last year, they're all coming back to this defense. So you don't have to teach a bunch of new players how to play within Brian Flores' system. I'm sure there's going to be some rookies on that side, and maybe the Vikings got a break with Caleb Banks getting hurt that he might drop in the draft a little bit, but there's not going to be many new players. So these guys are all going to come back with all the knowledge that they had last year, and he's going to come back with the knowledge of who fits. They had to find out halfway through the season about Eric Wilson. They will not have to find out this time. Jeff says, what's the Vegas over-under for 2026? If it's more than 8 games, bet the under. So you are not high on this move, apparently. They do not have over-unders out yet, as far as I've seen. I mean, maybe there's some places that have over-unders at this moment. Usually they come out later when the dust is settled on the offseason and the draft and so forth. Where would you put it, though, with Kyler Murray? I'd put it at 9.5. I would put the over-under at 9.5. I think Vegas will put it at 8.5. That's my guess. And I do not think that I would not be projecting that they win less than 8 games with a quarterback of this caliber. It just doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up. When you start looking at how other quarterbacks who are veterans have performed with this team, even Nick Mullins had them in a bunch of games, but guys that are on the same level, where in terms of quarterback tiers, Kyler Murray's consistently been in the same tier as Kirk Cousins by NFL executives. So I think I would put it at 9.5 games myself, and I'm guessing that Vegas will put it at 8.5. Doomer KO, exciting football back in my eyeballs. We'll never be champs, so entertainment is the best outcome. Yeah, you never know. You never know. I've always said that the year the Vikings win the Super Bowl will be when you never see it coming. When you go into a season saying, whatever. It won't be any expectations, and then it'll just happen. I've always said that. SWAT says 3,400 yards, 32 touchdowns, 350 yards rushing. I am curious about the rushing. He was effective running last year. 2024, he ran for 500 yards and ended up with 7.3 yards per rush. I think you might be right that they might do less of it. He might be scrambling a little less, that they want him to play within structure more. But also, I mean, this is a guy where I was watching a play today of him against New Orleans, where he drops back and they forget to block the left defensive end. Just don't block him at all. Whoops. And Kyler Murray, I think it was Cam Jordan. Maybe it's the right defensive end. Whichever side it was. Total free runner. Kyler Murray drops back. The guy, it's like in the grasp. And he just goes whoop and right out of there and 20 yards. Just like that. Just what? I mean, so you have somebody who can make an offensive line right. And I know that we've spent a lot of time saying they don't have enough pass blocking. They don't have enough line. The line isn't good enough. Let me tell you, Arizona's lines have not been spectacular. And he's made them right a lot. My 2 cents. Justin Jefferson, 1,630 yards. That might be a little bit on the high side, but I think a Justin Jefferson over under is probably like 1,350. And it just gets him back on track of being the top or one of the top receivers in the NFL. Maybe since there'll be more short stuff, I would go with 108 catches or something like that. Because remember, we think of Jefferson, the last thing that we've seen of Jefferson's greatness is downfield bombs from Sam Darnold. That was not always him from Kirk Cousins. I mean, sometimes it was, but it wasn't always. And one of the things that Kyler does that I've noticed on tape is he loves to loft it up there for his receivers. And he was not rewarded a lot from Marvin Harrison Jr. or Zay Jones or other guys that they have. But Justin Jefferson is the type who can reward you for giving a receiver a chance down the field. So if he's running like a slot fade or something and he's just throwing it up over his head, best ball tracker in the entire NFL, I think that's going to work for them. But even if you're throwing these quick outs and 10 yards to the sticks type of outbreaking routes, the in breakers, I've seen him do it. I think that there's a little bit of, at times, that he does not want to throw it into the tighter windows and would rather just check it down. I've definitely seen that from him. But the idea that he can't throw over the middle is not correct. He was 30 for 41 throwing over the middle into right between the hashes in 2024, which is not a ton of those throws, but or I'm sorry, was that last year in those 5 games? I'll have to check. But he had a high, no, it's 2024. Yeah. Right between the hashes and the intermediate area is the stat I'm thinking of. So he will do it when he's got it there, but he's not going to force it. And sometimes in this offense, you kind of do need to force it because of Justin Jefferson. They have to know that. I don't believe from watching Murray that you just have to have your guys playing basically on the sidelines all the time. He throws a lot of passes that are sort of coming through the middle of the field and maybe clearing in between the hashes. There's a lot of throws like that that technically land on the other side of the hash, but are a route that goes through the middle of the field. So I think that's a little bit of a misconception. AP Carlin, completion percentage, 69.5%. Could certainly see that based on his career. 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, 9 picks. I don't think he's going to turn the ball over a ton. He's been, from 2020 to 2024, he's been in the top 15 when it comes to interception percentage and sack percentage. There will be mistakes, but I don't think he makes them at a crazy high rate. Oak Dog, he says, this is the Vikings and bad stuff happens, so maybe flip your odds and start with 10% chance of it being good. No, this is the Vikings and good stuff happens to guys like this. I bumped up the odds based on the fact that I'm assuming that the reclamation project reclaims with the Vikings. It's exactly what happens. Brees, 10 wins, 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, and less than 14 interceptions. I could see that. Definitely could see that. BM, all I really want is fun. Football is an entertainment product for sure. Far Rider says, I was the first person that suggested Kyler to the Vikings. It was I will say I have an unfair advantage that I podcast every day. So I got a head start on others, weekly podcasters, when it came to Kyler. As far as, my viewpoint on it and why I've continued to bang the drum that I thought it was the best idea, it really came down to me that it just checked all the right boxes. It was low commitment, low dollars, and a player that I could see having his turnaround. With all the other options, I just had such a tough time envisioning that there could be a turnaround. The other thing too is that, remember, KOC competed against Kyler Murray in the best season of his career in 2021. KOC was in that division, so they were preparing for Kyler Murray with the Los Angeles Rams. There's a lot of familiarity there. This isn't someone that he doesn't know. And that kind of went into my head as well. But really, the formula was not complex. It was that a floor doesn't really matter. If you get Mac Jones and he has a higher floor, who cares? Oh, great. A high floor of eight wins. Well, who cares about 8 wins? It's all about ceiling to me. And Kyler's got the ceiling. Lenny says, I get that sitting McCarthy is probably the best for him, but what's best for the team? If we start McCarthy and he's bad next year, there are no more quarterback questions. You just draft one. Well, I think that what's best for the franchise, you said what's best for the team, what's best for the franchise, what's best for the team. So there's a theoretical argument that I think is what you're making, that finding out if you have something in McCarthy, which, by the way, they've had him for almost 700 days now. This is not like they just met him. That's one of the struggles I have with that. Hey, what about finding out? Like, finding out. I mean, they found out that he got hurt 5 times, really, in 2 years. They found out that he's way behind in terms of his accuracy, that he was way behind in terms of running an offense, that he wasn't emotionally mature enough. Like, they found out a lot. That's why Kyler Murray's here. But I see where you're going with that argument of, well, if they were forced to stick with McCarthy, if ownership said you may not go out and get another quarterback except for Joe Flacco as a backup, then there is a scenario where it clicks and you take advantage of the rookie contract still, and you go into next year, you either know that you need to draft one for sure. There's no more sort of, oh, what is JJ really, and what are we really going to do in the future? You have more defined paths. It's either going to work or not, or at least that's what you think, theoretically. What about the path where JJ McCarthy wins 9 games and is like, okay, what about that path? See, I think that's like, theoretically, we think it's a 2 outcome thing. We think that he's either going to be amazing and they're all set, or he's going to be horrible and they're going to draft number 1. That's also, I don't even think that's the most likely scenario. I think if McCarthy started for this team, the most likely scenario is probably 9 wins or 8 wins. And he throws, 22 touchdowns, 12 picks, 3,300 yards, gets hurt a couple times. Like, what if that happens? And then you're still asking, well, what did we really do this for? But from a team perspective, see, there is a difference between franchise, big picture, where I could see your argument, but the team, let's look around the locker room. Justin Jefferson, is that guy important? I think so. What's best for Justin Jefferson? What's best for Aaron Jones? What's best for TJ Hawkinson? What's best for Brian O'Neill? What's best for Christian Darrisaw? What's best for Will Fries? What's best for Jordan Addison? How is any of that answer? What's best for Brian Flores? What's best for, well, we'll see if Jonathan Grenard is here, the defense. How is any of that answer to go back to JJ McCarthy and not get a quarterback who's been a Pro Bowl caliber player and top 15 quarterback in his career? I mean, around the locker room, what's best for KOC? What's best for Flores? What's best for any of the front office people who have their jobs on the line? It's definitely not going back to JJ McCarthy and rolling a dice and hoping and dreaming that he could be a totally different person. BM says Arizona doing what Minnesota will never do, get a line to draft first in the draft. This is supposed to have promising quarterback options. Well, I do agree with that, which is the Vikings have never really been in that position, and they probably will not be anytime soon, that they're going to be in a spot where they're just going to completely tank, go all the way to the bottom. But I will say this is there is a timeline here that becomes very interesting after 2026, depending on what happens with Kyler Murray, because if it fails and they don't feel great about going back to JJ McCarthy and they're looking at drafting a quarterback, you are looking at maybe something beyond a competitive rebuild. Maybe you are looking at a full rebuild. If they win 7 games and the wheels just come off, if Murray is not good and McCarthy comes in and he's not good either, and the defense completely falls off from where they were and there's injuries and it's just a complete mess, and they win 6 or 7 games, you are looking at tearing this thing limb for limb. That this roster is going all the way down to the screws. And you might be talking about even having a discussion about trading Justin Jefferson because his cap hits start to go through the roof. And if he's not willing to sign an extension, then you get into that spot. That's one of the reasons this is so vital to get a real starting quarterback who's been good before in the NFL and is a veteran and can handle it, is because Justin Jefferson's future might end up being on the line here, how this plays out. Zach says, I think we have a real shot of having the best defense and offense in the division. I think, you look at Detroit last year offensively, and despite their issues with the offensive line, they still scored a ton of points. I would still put Detroit at the top, and I think Green Bay is pretty equal, and maybe Chicago a step down after losing Drew Dahlman, who I think was a huge part of their success. I think Detroit, because of their track record, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, they just have so much talent. Laporta was out actually a lot last year. They have so much talent. I would still put them as an offense that's probably in the top 5 to 7. And I think the rest of them are more fringe top 10-ish. Kind of depends on whether Green Bay can get their stuff together offensive line-wise. At least there's a case. David, you're going to have to watch Kyler play a little more when it comes to his ability to see downfield. It's, I think, pretty clear when you watch him play that there is a ton of the offense that's in rhythm where he's throwing. There's been plenty of quarterbacks who are sub 6'2" before in the NFL, but they have to throw with anticipation and they have to create windows for them. And he's not Drew Brees, but they did that for Drew Brees. They did it for Steve Young back in the day. Kirk's not the tallest guy I've ever seen. I know he's taller than Kyler Murray, but there's been plenty of quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, who have had success, including Kyler Murray, who's also had success. So if you've actually watched him, I can always tell when someone's actually watched Kyler or not, because the idea that he just drops back, can't see anything, scrambles around, and then throws is totally false. It's just not what happens. Matthew says, how does Murray do in the screen game? We've had deficiencies there. I don't ever look at the screen game. They didn't have a great screen game in Arizona, by the way. His numbers were not much in the screen game in Arizona. They could help him there a lot. I look at the screen game as being entirely on the team, on the play designer, which it has not been great from KOC in the past. It was pretty good in 2024, but has not been great in the past. I think that they could really improve that here this season. Well, you know who's big for this? I think the most underrated thing the Vikings have done is hired Frank Smith from the Miami Dolphins. If he had a more snazzy name, people would be talking about him a lot, because that's a team that knew how to run a good screen pass and had a good wide zone run game. You go watch their run game, very impressive. So I think that's going to be big. But, I do think that when it comes to the screen game, it does act as a reminder that you do need to have stuff around Kyler Murray. It's not like he's just going to win all the games for you. You're not just going to roll the football out and Kyler Murray just wins the game for you. He's going to need you to play good defense. He's going to need good in-game decisions, which I thought Jonathan Gannon struggled with a lot. He's going to need them to run the football consistently and effectively, which they have not done in KOC's first 4 years in the NFL. It was better last year, but it was not consistently effective or relied upon. So there will have to be things. You do have to protect him. Because one thing I've noticed about protection in Kyler Murray is that, and this is about the see downfield thing, it's not that he can't, but when the pressure gets into his face, he is not Josh Allen where he's big enough to just still have his normal throwing motion. What ends up happening to Kyler Murray when pressure starts to get pushed back into his face is he will throw like back foot fadeaway kind of stuff, which you see Jordan Love doing, but he's also like 6'4", and it'll be inaccurate. That happens a lot to Kyler Murray for some of his inaccurate throws, is when the pressure gets pushed back into his face, then he cannot step into the throw the same way. And he does miss a lot when that happens. So it is important that they're able to protect him. James says, not saying Murray won't play well, but just disappointing overall. Year 5, fourth different starting quarterback, and just hoping. Oh, you mean the whole thing? The whole thing is disappointing overall, right? I don't think that's unfair. Just hoping they'll win 10 games. Feel like the big picture, they're headed for more changes. the big picture, well, let's keep one thing in mind, that it is very, very hard to project what is going to happen in the NFL ever. And I wrote this article the other day. I wrote about trying to look into the crystal ball and try to figure out the next 2 years. And what I ended up with was a choose your own adventure game. Well, if this happens, then that happens. And if this happens, then that happens. We have no idea where it's going to go into the future. We never really do, because I would have said to you that Sam Darnold will start 6 games and they'll go to McCarthy, and then McCarthy will succeed. And that's what I would have expected. And now here we are with Kyler Murray as the Vikings quarterback. I don't know who the hell saw that coming. So talk about the unpredictable nature of the Minnesota Vikings. Favre was the quarterback here once, which is the most unpredictable thing, I think, in NFL history, or one of them in Vikings history. And then, Randall Cunningham going 15-1 is probably the most, but Favre showing up here and going to the NFC Championship game, who knows, right? You never have any idea how it's going to go. When it comes to overall, where the disappointment still exists, and where I think that people do kind of push back a bit on the Kyler Murray idea, is that they're still holding on to the dream that was promised, which is something you'd never had before. And the reason why, well, this I think is exciting because of the caliber of player that you got and the excitement level of the player that you got. There's also this, this wasn't supposed to be how it went. It wasn't supposed to be going back to another quarterback that somebody else let go and you have to talk yourself into. It wasn't supposed to go that way. What was supposed to happen was the Vikings compete with Kirk. They move on from him. They draft the franchise quarterback. They get the next Drake May or the next Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Herbert even, Hurts even, Love even, somebody that you can run out year after year. So the offseason conversation is about guard and not about quarterback. And the Vikings offseason conversation has been about quarterback how many years in a row? Even when Kirk was here. After 2019, we're talking, will they do an extension with him? After 2021, are they going to bring him back with the new regime? After 2023, are they going to bring him back or draft a quarterback in 2024? You've been having this discussion since Dante Culpepper got hurt, and then, Teddy Bridgewater as well. Who's going to play quarterback is kind of a tough discussion to be having almost every single offseason. So from that perspective, I get the disappointment. There was a certain path that was promised that should have been the right one. I thought all along it was the right one. I thought Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, maybe the execution was not perfect, but I thought the idea was right. The idea that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell and the Wilfs came up with was to move on from Kirk and draft a quarterback and spend a bunch of money around him and go for it. And had McCarthy been good, we might have been talking about the Vikings playing in the NFC Championship last year if he had been Drake May, but he's not. So you have to do what you can. But I feel you on that disappointment. Absolutely. Grateful Dad, was it smart not to spend in free agency when they had the expectation of getting Kyler for $1 million? The free agency thing is very interesting because you really can't go spending and promising contracts until you know for sure that Kyler is signing on the dotted line. But what I'm not sure if they anticipated, or at least I know I didn't, was that in the span of 3 days, everyone would just be gone. I don't know if they thought that was going to happen, because this is, I think, the fastest I've ever seen. I remember when they first launched the legal tampering thing, and the first day of legal tampering was like nothing happened. And I was like, oh, okay. The second day, then it started to roll in. And then when free agency opened, then a lot of the deals happened. That's not that way now. These teams already have most of these deals worked out with agents and players by the time that the legal tampering begins. Unless they're the fastest contract negotiators in history, you'll be 5 minutes in. Well, wow, you worked that out pretty darn quick, huh? At the combine, that's where they meet with every agent who, they work out these contracts with. So I think it was hard to slow play it because things went so quickly. Isn't it funny that the Falcons got banged for tampering when everybody's clearly doing this at the combine? But that's a little bit of the issue, I think, is that since everybody is doing this, that the legal tampering period begins and everyone's gone by day 3. And even today, Brisker finds a home and Nick Cross finds a home yesterday. And like all these players at the safety position that they may have wanted to look at are just off the table. All the running backs just off the table in 3 days. So was it smart? One thing I will point out is that a lot of the teams that have spent a lot of money, including the Minnesota Vikings last year, have ended up regretting it. And when they signed Allen and Hargrave last year, it was very exciting. Like, wow, they've got these defensive tackles. And then I would still argue, people have said, oh, it was a huge failure. I don't think it was a huge failure. I think that they had a top 5 defense in a lot of key metrics, which is what would have worked out great if they had any offense, and we would have said, good job, even if they had to cut Allen and Hargrave. So we look at it through the lens of the money spent versus the winning, as opposed to, hey, that side of the football, they got the results they were looking for. But even then, you're eating a lot of money. It wasn't a huge success. You overspent on Jones. You overspent on Ryan Kelly. It didn't work out. Will Fries didn't give you the type of production that you were looking for. Neither did Byron Murphy Jr. at huge dollar figures. It's not always the team that spends the most that ends up having the most success in free agency. But I do think now they're going to look around and go, okay, does anybody want to be a Minnesota Viking? And you know who this is on now? This is on Brian Flores and the front office to get creative and find some guys that are still out there that are going to help, because there have been plenty of signings through the years that happened in the second week of free agency that ended up being better than some of the biggest, most expensive ones. Mr. Mayor says, I can't understand the Colts signing Jones to $1 billion. Kyler Murray would have been a better and more talented quarterback than Jones, even if Jones hadn't had the Achilles injury late last season. Totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. I think that they like the person, Daniel Jones. I think they like the fit with their offense. They're going to have Shane Steichen still. And I'll say again that not all Achilles injuries are the same. There are versions of the Achilles that are going to set you way back. And there are versions of the Achilles that if it's not completely torn. I don't know if they ever announced that. But, remember Brian O'Neill at the end of the 2022 season tore his Achilles. And he was back the next year because it wasn't the full tear. They could just repair it. They didn't have to do the whole thing. And we have a foot doctor who listens to the show. He can clarify that. But there are different timelines when it comes to the surgeries for the Achilles. So I don't know what that is. But in terms of like Daniel Jones's actual talent and actual production over his career versus Kyler Murray, it's not really close. And the price tag is crazy. The Colts are another one of those teams that sort of commits to being in the middle all the time. And I imagine that's going to be the case for them. I think that they liked being right about Daniel Jones, maybe more than the decision. But you look around and go, well, the other options were if Kyler was always coming to Minnesota. And supposedly, like, this is true that he grew up a Vikings fan. I mean, gosh, a guy saying as a kid he cried tears with Favre. You're like, a kid? Oh, a kid. He was a kid then, huh? Man, like how old are all of us now? Because Favre feels like just the other day, and it was like 17 years ago. It feels like just the other day that Favre was thrown across his body or throwing to Greg Lewis in the back of the end zone. But, like he may have always wanted to come here. And I don't know what other teams were interested. I don't know if they talked about that, but I generally agree with you that when we compare, and this is why I can't, when people come in and they say, well, Kyler can't do this and he can't do that. Well, no one says that he's Favre. No one says that. But Daniel Jones at $44 million, is that good? Garnett, we won 9 games, or Garnett. Oh, Garnett Moss. Yeah. I know someone whose daughter is named Garnett. So Garnett Moss says, we won 9 games with no quarterback. How does anyone think we won't win 11 running it back? Yes, we lost some players, but not that much. They really didn't lose much. If I'm going through it correctly, am I missing something? Because I feel like they haven't lost anyone except for Grenard and Hargrave. They've brought back, and they added, one depth cornerback, but they brought Ryan Wright. It matters, but they've brought back pretty much the entire roster. which to me is also, when you talk about playing in free agency, it's also kind of a signal of they think that this roster was good enough to win with last year, and they're keeping it all together. When you bring Aaron Jones back and you bring TJ Hawkinson back, and they haven't traded Jonathan Grenard yet, and I think now that you have Kyler Murray, can we talk about that for a second? Now that you have Kyler Murray, don't trade Jonathan Grenard. It doesn't make any sense. Try to win. Yes, in the long run, it does make sense because you get some cap space and you can draft an extra player or two, so forth. But knowing that after this year, things get very, very tricky with keeping it all together, why not just do everything you can to win? You got a starting quarterback who's won before. I know he hasn't won the Super Bowl before, but he's won a lot of games before. A guy with potential to win a lot of games for you. I just don't see it making a ton of sense to trade Grenard unless you get something really crazy. Antoine says we have a chance to be really good. Todd said if they can move up and get Jeremiah Love, they will win. They'll be in the Super Bowl. Okay, Todd. Some of you buying Kyler Murray more than others. I keep checking back to see if FanDuel. Let's refresh and see if FanDuel's changed its mind. Let's see. They have not. Still over on FanDuel plus 600. What do you think they should be? Do you think they should be closer to the favorites? Or that's our FanDuel question of the day, I suppose. With the Jeremiah Love thing. Can't do an over-under without a punter. You guys are funny. With the Jeremiah Love thing, I think it's interesting, and I think it would be crazy, and it would be fun. I don't think it's a smart move. But, I mean, I just said don't trade Grenard because you're trying to win. I mean, if you're trying to win, if this is much more all-in than I think it is, then I don't know. Maybe go for it. But if you have to give up on next year's first when you could be drafting a quarterback, you can't do that. At least by the traditional charts, moving up from 18 to number 9, if Jeremiah Love got there, would take a second and a fourth. That you might be willing to do. I still wouldn't, but you might be willing to do that. If you're talking about dipping into next year's first, you cannot do that. Truckett says, I think we extend Cashman and Van Ginkel this offseason to give us some cap relief. Cashman, I would say yes. Van Ginkel, I would be skeptical on. He's 31. I'm not sure that how much farther you want to go with that. Blowfish says 49ers apparently interested in Addison again. But what are they giving up? Because after you sign Kyler Murray, I'm just not feeling inspired to start sending players out for draft capital. I think it's a great idea long-term to get more draft capital, especially if you're not going to keep Jordan Addison. But he's good at football, unless you're really, really concerned. Now, I mean, like, if you see the comments, what was it, TJ Hushmanzada was on a podcast talking about Brandon Ayuk, and he was basically saying, like, I wouldn't sign the guy. I think he's crazy. If that's how they feel about Jordan Addison, if they feel like this is a major problem and cannot be helped, then, Jawan Jennings is out there, trade Jordan Addison, sign Jawan Jennings, get somebody else in here. Okay, I can buy that. And I think that'll tell us if they move him, that means they're really, really concerned about what's going on off the field. Otherwise, if they're only mildly concerned, which you are every day with Jordan Addison, then 1 year, $4 million, and then just move on kind of makes sense for me. I'm a Twerk says Grenard wants to get paid. Yeah, I know, but I mean, he has a contract. So as much as it's true that he wants his contract market corrected, he has a contract that he signed, and they could do something maybe after the season or even trade. He's under contract, I think, through 2027. They could even trade him after next season as well. It may have been, I don't know. I've been curious about what kind of games are getting played behind the scenes a little bit with this situation, because it now does not make any sense to me to start trading off players. Derek says we need to get some good young pieces in the secondary, some linebacker depth, and we'll be pretty good on defense again. Yes, there are now not as many players on the market still that could be difference makers. It's on the Vikings to find guys like Isaiah Rodgers last year. Think about what they did last year. The two best signings that they made were Isaiah Rodgers and Eric Wilson, two guys that people didn't think a whole lot of. Those signings didn't move the needle at all. Nobody cared about those. I mean, nobody was making breaking news updates or anything out of Eric Wilson and Isaiah Rodgers, but they ended up making the biggest impact. So it's on them now to find what's still out there and fill out the rest of this roster. And then they have to succeed in the draft. And I know that, when it comes to the draft, it's random. I've said it a million times. They have to get more draft capital somehow. Maybe that'll be trading down in the draft. Even if it's trading up, I mean, they need to succeed in this draft to get some immediate impact players, because clearly that's not happening in free agency. Is that Lucan? Do you think that there will actually be a quarterback competition, or does Murray basically have the job? McCarthy is 23. Let's do some Jordan Love treatment. Unless Murray has a 2024 Darnold, and then let's sign him forever. I do not believe that it's a real quarterback competition, but I see zero benefit, from Kevin O'Connell to come out and say it's not a quarterback competition. I believe that when we get out there for OTAs and minicamp, we're going to see nothing but Kyler Murray as QB1. That's perfectly fine. I totally agree with you. The Jordan Love thing is good. I think that Murray would not have signed here if KOC said, I'm not giving you the starting job. You have to beat out JJ McCarthy. And we love JJ McCarthy more than anything under the earth or under the sun, but good luck, kid. I don't think he's signing here. I think he would have gone to Pittsburgh. And I saw Andrew Filipponi, a friend of mine in the Pittsburgh media, saying that the Steelers were one of the teams that reached out to Kyler Murray for a Zoom call. And the Vikings clearly did not let him get out of the building in Minnesota, but he would have gone to Pittsburgh if he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback, because he could have been the starter there. Garnett is a nice name. I agree with that. But I'm in Minnesota. I should have read it Garnett. Definitely should have read it as Garnett. Derek says, our biggest losses on defense were Allen and Hargrave, a position that we got good play from Redmond and LDR and even Tyron Ingram-Dawkins by the end of the year. I don't expect a large drop-off. I think that Allen and Hargrave gave them a lot down the stretch in terms of beating one-on-ones. They did create a good amount of pressure overall. I think they added up to like 65 pressures over the season, which was twice as many or more than with Harrison Phillips and Jerry Tillery. But it is a position that you can find guys, as Jonathan Bullard showed. I mean, Bullard's still out there. I would bring back Jonathan Bullard and go back to stuff in the run, moving bodies up there. And, well, it can be frustrating. I mean, I don't know. I mean, did Jihad Ward sign? Bring the band back. Did Jihad Ward sign anywhere? Just bring those guys back and do the same thing they did in 24. They were a better defense overall, by the way, in 25 than they were in 24. And Allen and Hargrave were part of that. But it's not irreplaceable to be able to find guys who can fill that role and stop the run and create lanes for blitzers and still do some of the things they did last year. They will miss them, but I don't think that they drop off massively because of it. Mr. Mayor says, I assume do you mean KOC here? Maybe you don't mean KOC. Maybe you're talking about somebody else, about staking the reputation on JJ McCarthy. I'm not sure who you're talking about, but when it comes to KOC and JJ McCarthy, oh, okay, you're talking about somebody else. Well, that's, everybody's got, the way I look at it is everybody's got their opinions and everybody does this a different way. And there's somebody for everybody. There's a lot of different media people out there that do things different ways. So you guys get to choose who you want to listen to. Blowfishes says Kwesi should have pushed harder for the Patriots to trade Drake May. Yeah. I mean, in a magical world, that would be great had that been the case, but I don't think that was real. I don't think that was something that could have actually happened, because in the Giants documentary where they go through their offseason, the Giants tried to trade up from 4 to 3 with the Patriots to get Drake May, and they said no. So if you can't trade up from 4 to 3, you're probably not trading up from 11 to 3, no matter what you offer. Mr. Mayor says, what were JJ McCarthy's really high highs? Literally one quarter in week 1. I think he had, what I would call them is exactly what KOC, I like the way KOC described it to us at the combine. KOC said that he showed the traits that they drafted him for. And I would agree with that. I think he showed the traits. He showed playmaking. We can't say that he never did anything. Like he had some very good throws. Touchdown against Baltimore to Jalen Nailor. Also the throw to Nailor at the end of the Lions game. There's the run against the Lions where he jukes out Alex Anzalone. The throw to Nailor against the Cowboys, rolling to his left in the end zone. It's a great throw. It's a great play. His arm strength, his mobility, his moxie, it was all on display at different times. But it just wasn't all together yet. And I agree with, the commenter who says, look, this is similar to a Jordan Love situation. I could say Malik Willis too. I could say a bunch of different quarterbacks. Some guys just aren't fully ready to come in and handle everything. It's so hard to play quarterback in the NFL. At no time is there 32 guys who can play quarterback in the NFL. There are, how many quarterbacks can you really win with in the NFL? Is it like 15? It's probably like 15, right? That you can really win with, and then maybe another 5 that are serviceable at any given time. If you go back through the last 20 years, since there's been 32 teams in the NFL, when did the Texans come into the league? 2003. Since the Texans came into the league, how many per year quarterbacks would you say were capable of performing well enough to get into the playoffs and really win something? It's probably between 18 and 22 quarterbacks in the entire world. It's hard. And there's also the fact that 50% of the quarterbacks that are taken in the first round just don't work out at all. So I don't know what is going to happen with JJ McCarthy next. There's scenarios where Murray doesn't make it through the entire season, and we see McCarthy anyway, which is another reason for KOC to continue to support him and develop him and everything. There have been quarterbacks who have been benched. There's been quarterbacks who have had terrible starts to their season and then quickly gotten better, or their career and quickly gotten better. Jared Goff is one of them. So, and I know that was under bad circumstances, but we know so little. We should always treat the quarterback situation like we don't know a lot about it. We all want to think we know a lot about it, but it proves over and over again that we don't. We can look back at, I mean, how about this? This was something crazy, and I don't want to call anybody out because we're all wrong about quarterbacks sometimes. But I was looking last year for those off-season grades, and I found a grade by one very respectable and very smart writer who named Sam Darnold one of the losers of free agency last year, because a lot of people just thought Darnold wasn't going to do anything in Seattle. It's not going to be good enough. So with McCarthy, there were highs, there were traits, and there were flashes, and there's enough to say you're not just going to get rid of him. And I also think his work ethic is there, and I think that his personality and his drive are a detriment and something that is really good. I think he can try way too hard, which we saw at times. And I also think that it means he's going to push and continue to compete. BM says Kyler's highs are higher and his lows are much higher than McCarthy's. I'd agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree that his highs are definitely higher. I mean, his highs for sure have been very high in the NFL. Even his 2024 season, when he didn't have a great team, his highs were higher. So, I mean, it was only an 8-9 season, but 3,800 yards, and there's a lot of good games in there. And I'll mention again, he had a perfect quarterback rating and a 41-10 victory against the Rams. We've never seen anything like that. I'm a twerk. You are wrong that I don't know anything about Todd Bouman. That is not true. Isn't Todd Bouman Buffalo, Minnesota? Don't tell me I don't know Todd Bouman. Todd Bouman, man, that guy did not care at all. He was throwing bombs. I've watched the Todd Bouman games. Come on, man. DC Smithers, thank you for the super chat. Does Kyler work in a McVay style offense? I think that Kyler works when you play to the things that he does very well. And what's supposed to be fundamental to McVay is that it's not a McVay. There's never a McVay offense. It's whatever you need to do. So just for example, when McVay gets the job, this is why with KOC, at least you could say from his roots, from where he comes from who he coached for, from how he got this job in Minnesota, one of the fundamental elements of Sean McVay is that he's been brilliant in adapting his offense. Because when McVay first got the job in Los Angeles with Jared Goff, he put him under center almost every play. They ran motions and play actions and rollouts all the time. Tons of screens, stuff like that to try to protect Jared Goff. And it became such a silly thing because every coach is talking in the headset, giving advice and thoughts. It's always happened since the headsets existed. But for some reason with Jared Goff, it became like a big story that McVay was doing this. But McVay was running under center, wide zone, play action, classic Shanahan stuff that he'd taken from Washington. But then when they trade Goff and they get Matthew Stafford, they put him in the shotgun like every play. He's a little under center, but mostly shotgun, air it out, downfield. I think he led the league in picks and then threw for like 4,700 yards or something. It was wild. It was this all-out air assault, downfield stuff. It was throwing. It was send guys deep and then throw underneath the Cooper Kupp time and time again, which you could do with this offense as well. Those throws are there if you want them. Carson Wentz showed us that. But then this last year with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, they start running 2 tight ends all the time. Sometimes even 3 tight ends. So there's, at least in KOC's roots, an adaptation. And I still will go back to, with Kirk Cousins, they're running him out of shotgun all the time. He was actually under center not as much in 2022, and he's throwing a lot of quick stuff, especially in 2023. He's not pushing the ball deep down the field. Darnold comes in. They run much more of a kind of Shanahan type stuff because he had come from San Francisco. He's under center. He's running boots and play actions, and then he grew into what you really see. You want to talk about adapting the offense. What you really see is early with Sam Darnold, they are protecting him. They are not asking him to do almost anything. It's like make a couple plays a game and you're fine. By the end of Darnold, he's playing like Matthew Stafford. He's in the shotgun every play. They can't run the ball at all. He's just throwing it all over the place. It was interesting to see. And so that's what's probably going to happen here is it's going to have to grow with Kyler Murray throughout a season. And that's been one of the biggest criticisms of Murray throughout his career. And they have to prove that one wrong. That early in the season, he's great. And then later on, he fades. He's going to have to prove that one wrong. Arcanon says if the Vikings had a better run game, it could have been better. It's a team game. Obviously, the quarterback play wasn't perfect, but there's no way we were beating Seattle. Well, no, there was no, last year, no, but the run game for the Vikings, the thing that you'll never believe, but is actually true, is that the Vikings had a higher EPA per rush than Seattle did. Because Seattle really committed to the run, and they would run even when it wasn't successful, and they'd keep doing it. Because they knew what they had on their defense. This is a Kubiak thing. It's something a KOC has to learn, and that he claims to have learned, and he's got to show it. And he kind of did in the Max Brosmer game, where he was just like, we're just going to win this game on defense. Max isn't doing anything. In the Christmas Day game, it was like, we're not doing nothing with the quarterback. We're going to punt and we're going to play defense. And that's how we're going to win that game. And it actually worked. But what Clint Kubiak and Mike McDonald were really good at was they played to the score. They played to their defense. Sam Darnold only got sacked 27 times last year. They made sure that the negative play for Sam Darnold, well, he did have other turnovers. He didn't have a lot of sacks. He had interceptions, but he didn't have a lot of sacks. And they protected him and ran the ball even when it wasn't advantageous. But the Vikings actually ended up having, by the end of the year, a better EPA per rush. So they were more successful running the ball than Seattle was, which is actually kind of funny and unexpected because Seattle ran it a lot more. So the Vikings were running it toward the end of the season quite a bit. And Jordan Mason ended up as a top 12 running back by PFF. It's not that they can't. It's can you commit to it and be consistent with it? And sometimes just say, let's not put it all on our quarterback. I think O'Connell likes to put it all on the quarterback. With Kyler Murray, that's the biggest adjustment. I think he can play in rhythm. I think he could play under center. I've seen these things happen. I think he could throw it over the middle. I think that if he puts the ball up in the air for Justin Jefferson, his deep numbers are going to be a lot better if he puts the ball up for Justin Jefferson than putting it up for Greg Dortch. I think his deep numbers are going to be a lot better. throwing to great receivers that are ball trackers and contested catch artists. Like, I think it's going to change. But you can't just say throw the ball 35 times a game. I think you've got to be much more in the range of 25 passes, make them count, be highly efficient, and run the ball successfully, control the ball, play good defense. Derek says, regardless of how you feel about either JJ or Kyler in the QB room, looks significantly better last year than this time last year. This will at least give them a better baseline measure against JJ and Cam. That's for sure true that last year missing out on Daniel Jones, they wanted that. And maybe they would have ended up starting Daniel Jones, probably. BM, someday we'll get the N64 hooked up and play Madden. Someday. Aaron says, very disappointed. Signing a mid quarterback gets us no closer to a Super Bowl. We're just wasting a year of on-field development for JJ. The metrics from the last 5 games don't lie. Actually, the last 5 games do lie. Yeah, I think that they actually do. I believe I even dubbed it as being Fool's Gold when it was happening. I think that was actually what I called it, was Fool's Gold as it was going on, because you played every single one of the defensive coordinators, except for the last game where they didn't play starters. All the defensive coordinators he played well against got fired. Washington and Dallas and New York. New York didn't even have a defensive coordinator, and he only played the first half, and he was injured 2 more times in those last 5 games. They do lie, and if they didn't lie, then the team would be getting Joe Flacco as their backup quarterback and not Kyler Murray as their starter. If they thought that those last 5 games told the real story of JJ McCarthy. I think that we can't do it that way. You can't just pick this is like with baseball. You can't just pick the months where your favorite hitter hit well and then say the other ones don't count. It doesn't work that way. That's not how you do analysis and decision making. I think that your first point is the one that makes the most sense, which is there are probably folks out there saying, here we go again. This is a Kirk Cousins level quarterback, and you're probably right. From his career, he's been a Kirk Cousins level quarterback. But the thing about Kirk Cousins in Minnesota is that he wasn't paid $1 million. That's the difference. How many games would the Minnesota Vikings have won? And I know it's not the same exact equivalent, but how many games would the Vikings have won if Kirk Cousins had made $1.3 million? I mean, right? A lot more in 2020, a lot more in 2021, a lot more, maybe, 2022, they did win a lot of games. But if he was paid this little money and they could afford the roster, they didn't have to gut this roster because Kyler Murray's being paid $1 million. They didn't have to gut this roster. So I'm not totally in favor of saying, hey, superimpose, just throw in last year's results with Kyler Murray. But it's mostly the same team. And if you get even somewhat of the results, and if you've looked at, aren't they playing the NFC South? Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't they playing the NFC South? Like, they've got a schedule that's going to be a third place schedule and could be more favorable. The opportunity could be there. David says in 24, Kyler Murray had a better PFF rating than Sam Darnold. Well, that's the thing, is that people don't like to accept if they're down on Kyler, is that 3 different times he's been a top 12 quarterback by PFF, and 4 times he's been a top 15 quarterback by NFL executives. There's a pretty clear consensus on what Kyler Murray is in the NFL and in his grades and so forth. There's a very clear consensus of what that is. Oh man, have I missed other super chats? I'm really sorry. Oh my goodness, you're right. I have. I am so sorry about that. Video 318. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the huge super chat. I really appreciate that. And your message says, thanks for the hard work in providing Vikings content. It's not hard. I'll say that. It's not hard. It's fun. This is fun. This is exciting. This is exciting because you know why? I know you could be down on it, or you could say, and look, the person who's saying, and I don't want to get away from, thank you so much for the huge super chat. I know what you're saying. I get behind in the chat and then I miss those sometimes. I really appreciate it. I really, really do. Thank you so much. And all of those of you who chose to be here on this day, that is a pretty seismic move and change. I really appreciate all of you. I really do. And some of you have been watching for 2.5 hours. I can't believe your commitment to listen to me talk about this. So thank you so much. And those of you who participate in the chat, I take so much from you guys. Great conversations, great ideas. I'm just so thankful for all of you this entire time. I mean, this has been a fascinating bunch of discussions that have led up to this moment. And now the door is swung open for a lot more. And I promise you, I will have a film session where I usually don't do that because you could get demonetized on YouTube. And I usually don't do it because I'm not a former NFL quarterback, but I've really been looking at a lot with Kyler Murray that I want to show you guys. So we'll do that at some point in the future very soon. We'll also get Josh Weinfuss from Arizona to talk about this. Manny Hill tomorrow night. We're going to continue live tomorrow and tomorrow night. So I'm excited about all of that. But I did want to say that, I don't think that you are being irrational. Whoops, how did that happen? What just happened? I don't think that any of you are being irrational. Did I just close that out by accident? By saying, yeah, now I just have a black box there. By saying that, there we go. We got it back. Oh no, I lost some of the chat. Sorry guys. I lost some of the chat. I'll pull it up on my phone. But I don't think anyone's being irrational by saying, oh my goodness, you're right. Wow. My friend Lauren coming in with a huge super chat. Donated to your favorite charity. Thank you, Lauren. You're the man. Lauren has been an incredibly supportive person throughout literally the entirety of Purple Insider. Unbelievably supportive. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, man. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But I think if you're the person who's said, this is just another middle of the road quarterback and it doesn't feel like the upside is winning the Super Bowl, I understand where you're coming from with that. And I have a difficult time disagreeing with the premise that, if we go look right now on FanDuel, where's the Super Bowl odds? I mean, oh, they do they have the wins? They have the win totals? I didn't know they had those up yet. Oh, look at that. Okay. I was right. Earlier I said they got some win totals up there. Good. We can work with this. FanDuel right now has the Vikings over under at 8.5, exactly where I expected it to be. I would go over on that. What are they for Super Bowl? It's not going to be great. The Vikings are, let's see, after this, plus 5,000 to win the Super Bowl, about the same as the Bucks and Commanders and Falcons. Well, a little ahead of the Falcons. So there is not a ton of belief in the markets that the Vikings are going to this year win 13 games, win the Super Bowl, and so forth. I will say last year that there wasn't a lot of belief that the Seattle Seahawks were either in the markets, but usually the markets are good and they're right. And that frustration is very, very fair. Screen share calamity. I know that was my bad. Sorry about that. It's very, very fair because the history of this team is always hoping that you can grab someone else's quarterback, pump up everything around him, hope and dream, and make it work. That's just always been who they are. And if you've gotten tired of that motif, then I totally understand it. Of, hey, can KOC get the most out of this guy? Can this wide receiver avoid being really mad and wanting to leave? It just does feel like history repeating itself. I totally get it. I do think from this situation that it is maybe a little bit different in the fact that Kyler Murray is in his prime and it's not that far separated from when he's been really good. And if you can find, there is a scenario, and this is why it is different. I guess it should have been Sam Darnold, but you can't go back in time. Where it might be different is that if you end up with a Jared Goff type situation or Baker Mayfield type of situation, then you can keep your guy and you can build around him and you can have multiple years with one quarterback and take many swings at it with Murray. And this is the year where, when you talk about how good he is, this is the year where we find out how good Kyler Murray really is. Because there's lots of reasons and explanations and excuses for him for why it wasn't maximized in the past, but there aren't now. So you're going to know, is Kyler Murray a top 10 quarterback? Does he have that potential or does he not? Because would you be shocked if he played like a top 10 quarterback? You can't say that you would because Sam Darnold did off of much less in terms of his resume. Luke said, why would we turn down a top 15 quarterback? He fits into our timeline and has unbelievable athleticism and was on an organization that held him back. Well, I agree with all that. And as far as the timeline goes, the timeline has run to the end, mostly. Hawkinson's going to be a free agent next year. Aaron Jones is going to be gone. Brian O'Neill hasn't signed an extension yet. Clearly, things are happening when it comes to Jonathan Grenard. Andrew Van Ginkel's going into the last year of his contract. Like, there's a reset that's on the way. That doesn't mean they have to go back, but it means that there's going to be new guys here. You want to maximize your last chance with those guys. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for maximizing everything you can with these guys and then reassess where you're at. Jay Mulls says this is the year we find out, coming in healthy to a team that's competent, has weapons and a good defense on a 1-year contract. Yeah, I totally agree. I think you are going to find out how good Kyler Murray really is, because there's a lot of ways you can debate it. There's a lot of ways you can chop it up and look at, well, only when he was great, only when he had Hopkins, only when he did this or only when he did that. But it's true that he has not put together true elite franchise quarterback level numbers. There's also other guys before who didn't and then found their right spot. And that's why I keep going back to Baker. And I think Baker's a good example. I don't think he's quite as good in terms of a pocket quarterback and a fit for KOC as Sam Darnold was. And that's what, in hindsight, is so hard to look at and go, man, you had your guy. Like, that should have been your guy. Why was it not? He was the one who could throw downfield for you. He was the one that could hang in the pocket. You let 2 games have Sam Darnold get away, but you can't go back in time and fix that mistake. You can only try to fix it the best you can with someone like Kyler Murray. But the fact that they have a relationship going back a long time is interesting. Purple Rain says this is a referendum on Kyler and Arizona as a franchise and KOC's ability to adapt. Well, I mean, I don't think we need referendums on Arizona's franchise. They're trash. They're just awful. The players say they're awful. The results say they're awful. Many, many, many years of that ownership and that situation. This is a bad place to work. It's a bad team. It's a bad franchise. That's the reason why there's this stat out there that's something like, oh, this number of number 1 picks don't make it to 30 years old, number 1 overall picks with their franchises, which I guess that means you should never draft number 1. No, that's not what it means. Usually number 1 picks go to horrible franchises, and some of them continue to be horrible. The Cleveland Browns, I have friends in Cleveland radio, but I was dying today as I saw a clip of them talking about how they wouldn't want Kyler. And I was like, what? Kyler might be the best quarterback in your franchise's history by week 1. What? Recent history, not Bernie Kosar. But like, what? You wouldn't want, oh, I'm sorry. He would be slightly better than Joe Flacco, who's the second best quarterback, Kelly Holcomb. Are you kidding me? It's just like, there are some teams that are atrocious franchises, and Arizona's one of them that cannot win because of it comes down from the top, how awful they are. And that's where he's been. So I do agree it's a referendum on Kyler. Like, how good can you be, and KOC's ability to adapt. But I think we know, I think it's been answered what Arizona is. Vikings TW, I do believe we have an elite dual threat quarterback, gives you a better chance of winning a Super Bowl. Now, that is a good point. That's something that we haven't actually seen other than JJ McCarthy in a very long time. We have not seen a dual threat quarterback. We haven't seen a guy. That's what I was talking about on tape, about how there's free runners that are a guaranteed sack for any of the quarterbacks the Vikings have had, including McCarthy over the last, I don't know how long. That with Kyler Murray, they will not be a sack. They might be 10, 15 yards. Thank you, Shadow Dark, for the compliment. Appreciate that. Now that quarterback is out of the way, can we talk about punter? Opinion on is there a no tag clause for Kyler? That would make a lot of sense. If there is, have you seen that reported? If there is a no tag clause, I mean, I would want that. If I was Kyler, I would want that. I wouldn't want what happened to Daniel Jones. I would want to have all the options possible. 62 to Freedom says a Viking fan since the late 60s. Best chance was Derek Carr, who fits into the scheme. I think that Derek Carr at his absolute best, I might agree with you. Derek Carr has been retired due to a shoulder injury for an entire year, and Kyler is 28. So I'm not sure. Okay, producer Jonathan Harrison said there's a no tag clause. Well done. Well done by his agent. Makes total sense. Force the Vikings into a spot that if you love them, you have to sign them to a real contract extension. Good job. Perfectly fine with that. That makes total sense from his perspective. Why would you agree to a situation where the team could just tag you and keep you if you didn't want to? Gives him plenty of freedom. Okay. And already, Kyler's thinking about what his future is going to look like, which I think is smart. Expose says 1.3 million is too good to pass up. Best team Kyler has ever had. If the run game will work, no reason 10 plus wins isn't possible. I mean, it's hard. It's just hard to disagree with. Okay. Yeah. You guys are confirming. We're not even sure if Derek Carr is going to play. Alec Lewis with a C reported that. Okay. I just think that's smart business on his part and his agent's part. And if you're the Vikings, you're not in a position where you can fight over that, because your next best option is a retired guy who quit because of a shoulder injury. And then your next best option after that is a 43-year-old. And then your next best option after that is a 37-year-old who you already had and never accomplished anything with. So you kind of have to. Have we discussed the fullbacks yet? I'd like them to get one. User PS7 and a bunch of numbers. Kyler has a higher ceiling than McCarthy and a higher floor and is making less. Why do people not like it? I think people don't like it for a couple reasons. Number one is that there isn't anything in Kyler Murray's past where you can circle and say, he's won the Super Bowl. So it's not, you have to use your projection mindset as opposed to, it's sort of like with Darnold. When Darnold got here, it was, well, look, there's a 15 or 20% chance that this just works awesome. And Darnold and his skill set, this will be the best team he's ever had and so forth. But when they signed Darnold, a lot of people said, but he hasn't won in the past, which is true. And Kyler has won a bit in the past, but he's not won a ton. He doesn't have a winning record for his career. Neither did Matthew Stafford when he went to the Rams, by the way. I'm just saying that a lot of the stuff that you could say about Kyler is also stuff you could say about Matthew Stafford when he went to the Rams. Flawed former number 1 overall pick whose franchise had come apart. Why would they give away that guy? Well, because their franchise had gone into disrepair and was awful. It was terrible coaching and they had not put a good roster around him. And then he was better than he had ever been. There's a lot of examples of this. There's a lot of examples. But I think the main reason why people don't like it is if JJ McCarthy did not exist and the concept of JJ McCarthy did not exist, if this was flipped to 2024, and let's say there was no quarterbacks in the draft and Kirk had left and Kyler was the next man up, I think there'd be a ton of excitement about it. But because of the dream of the franchise quarterback draft pick who's here for 15 years is kind of being taken away by Kyler Murray coming in, that's where it's hard for people to accept, I think, because you hung on to the maybe it'll work out with McCarthy, and they promised, and the team, and I said this last year, well, there's signal in the decision. I mean, they must really believe in him, and I think they did, and it didn't work because it's hard to predict ball. Thank you so much, P. Gullick, for the super chat. And Diet Dr. Pepper. I've been so intently talking about this. I haven't even opened my Diet Dr. Pepper. Maybe give me a second here as we're almost into hour 3. I'll probably wrap it up in 15 minutes. I think we've said most of the things that could be said. And then we'll have a lot of good conversations going forward. But overall, I think it would be a very exciting day if that dream of McCarthy didn't feel like it was dying today. My argument is that it doesn't have to die today, and that none of us can predict what's going to happen next, but it feels like it. And a lot of people really, really wanted that to work out. and really wanted to be going into this year building more around JJ McCarthy, not going into this year getting someone else's quarterback. That's why it feels bad for some Vikings fans. I think for the ones who maybe have looked into Kyler Murray and watched him play and know his talent, then it's an exciting day. It's like, what? Okay, like offense back. Offense is back in Minnesota with Kyler Murray. This guy can lead. I believe in 2021, they were the 11th best offense. He can lead a top 12 offense in the league with the right circumstances. He is capable of that. Is he capable of leading the number one offense? Probably not. But top 15? I think so. Shadow Dark, do you think that Murray will recruit DeAndre Hopkins for a year? Possibly. I could see it if Hopkins wants to play. Clearly yeah. Sorry, you guys are funny. Cleveland has a Pro Bowl quarterback. Yes, they do. They do have a Pro Bowl quarterback. Yep. If Hopkins wants to play, I don't know what his situation is, if DeAndre Hopkins wants to play or not. If he does, they are lacking a wide receiver 3. They could use him. Alex, being intentionally like disingenuous with your points is always something that's, I don't understand why people do it. Like JJ McCarthy had a better record than Kyler Murray last year. Well, Kyler Murray played 5 games last year and we all have eyeballs. Come on, man. We got to be better than that. This chat has a very high bar. This is a good chat. 62 to Freedom. We need a third quarterback. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't agree with Kyler Murray being made of glass. He had one injury. It was an ACL that took out half of one year and half of the other year. And this year he was fine. A foot injury would have kept him out for a little bit, but he was fine. They did it on purpose. And it was right. It was right for them to do. Arizona did it right. Arizona did it right. Why would you play a quarterback who could win games for you? But made of glass is probably too much. I will at some point, BM. I will at some point in Kyler Murray's time here see if I can ask him if he wants to play chess. He is a great chess player, Kyler Murray. I am good. I am 90th percentile at rapid chess on chess.com, but he's higher than me. He's really good. Doomer KO said, haven't you said players who go to the bench like McCarthy have a very low percentage chance of coming back, but it's also his best chance? Can you talk more about that? Yeah, I know that those two things feel like they contradict each other, but I don't think they actually do. Because yes, if you go to the bench as a starting quarterback who was drafted to be the franchise guy, your odds of succeeding are just not high. I mean, that's reality, right? But with this particular situation, it's a little different because of the injuries that McCarthy has had throughout his career. And it does feel like it's happening more often than ever where players have gone to the bench and then improved and come back. And, they've often done it with different franchises, but you don't have, sorry, the Diet Dr. Pepper. You don't have to do it with a different franchise. You don't have to. It could be that it still works out here. I mean, think about, so there's a no tag clause. Think about if Kyler Murray plays well and he wins 10 games, but he's not that great and they win a lot with defense. And then they love what they've seen from McCarthy. And let's say Murray gets hurt a couple times and McCarthy comes in and plays 5 games and looks great. They go back to McCarthy then. Like, it doesn't have to be over. It's just that the odds do not point in your favor when you play your first 10 games like this. And I've mentioned this before. I mean, I've looked this up. If you're not a number 1 through 5 draft pick and you play like this in your first 10 games, you don't last very long. That's just the numbers. BGZ wants Miles Price on the field a little more. Yeah, I could see that. He's good with Otto Graham. He's good with the ball in his hands. John, how much better does Kyler make our defense if he maintains low turnover rate and picks up first downs with his feet? That's a great point. That is a great point. That last year, they were one of the worst teams in the league in terms of being on the field. And one thing that they'll talk about, you'll see critics of Kyler's talk about, well, his downfield passing and so forth, but his short passing is phenomenal. And that's first downs. And if you watch the interview with Alex Clancy the other day, the analyst who covers Arizona, he talked about this. Like, you're going to get 3rd and 6 where he throws it past the sticks and gets a first down and keeps the drive moving. It's just I think last year especially, they had trouble creating, and 2024 to some extent, they had trouble creating explosive plays. I mean, the Vikings have receivers who can help with that, but it is more of a Murray thing to check it down, get the first down, and keep moving. Staying on the field, not turning it over, not taking sacks, scrambling for first downs, it's a big deal. I think that can definitely help when it comes to the defense, that Brian Flores will be happy. B4913, are the Vikings mostly inactive due to them not having a GM, or do the Wilfs not want to spend money? Well, I think partly inactive because they didn't know what their quarterback situation was. Like, imagine Kyler said no and went to the Steelers. Then you've probably got to spend $15 million on Aaron Rodgers or something, or $15 million on Kirk Cousins, or get Derek Carr, and you need cap space. That's probably one of the reasons. I think the other reason is the Wilfs have spent so much money that they might also be saying, look, we've given you everything that you need here. Make it work. And that's fair. When it comes to spending in free agency, it's always a buyer beware. It's always kind of risky. BGZ, how should they look to improve the team now? I think you need to look at what's left in free agency and start talking about who can fill roles that you're not getting. The way that things have gone, how quick guys have come off the board, you're not getting a bunch of megastars in free agency, which usually you're not anyway, but you're definitely not now. So who can fill a role? Who can be Eric Wilson? Who can be Isaiah Rodgers? Who can be that guy in free agency? And I'll have to look. I've been a little wrapped up today, right now, talking to you guys, but I will take a look where the dust has settled and who might be left of someone who maybe only played 30 or 40% of snaps. But I mentioned Jonathan Bullard, someone like that. Deshaun Hand is out there. That's a guy who can stuff gaps. Like, okay, that helps. Stuff gaps. That helps. How about a wide receiver who can give you X number of snaps? And then you're going to have to find some guys through the draft. That's really it, because they don't have a lot of money, but they do have the ability to find guys who could be role players, who can be useful. Taylor says KOC has shown interest in all types of quarterbacks. Cousins, JJ, Darnold, Richardson may. He doesn't paint himself into a corner. He just wants a guy with talent, and Kyler has that. I agree with that. Yep. I totally agree with that. The idea that, and that's like the Derek Carr thing, the idea that he doesn't like running quarterbacks, then why were they interested in drafting Anthony Richardson or JJ McCarthy? McCarthy is a running quarterback. He's a scrambler. Dan, why did JJ seem to have a lot of block passes at the line? Is Kyler a yard farther back in the shotgun? No, I think the issue, so I looked this up with Kyler and his batted passes rate. It's not that high. It's average for batted passes rate. The reason that McCarthy kept getting passes batted down, I think one is that he telegraphs and takes, like, his windup, the way that it goes down and then comes back up. I think that telegraphs to defensive players. I mean, you're dealing with guys who have unbelievable, like, identification ability and quick twitch and everything. They see the ball go down. They know it's coming one way or the other, and the hands go up. The other thing was it was only for a section of the season that he had that problem, and he was sort of hop skipping and jumping up toward the line. You'd see him, he'd drop back and he would settle, and then he would, like, jump forward, and that's how he hit his hand a couple of times. He would, like, run forward to throw the ball when he could have just thrown it. And, Kyler just doesn't have these problems. Kyler is a really good thrower of the football, really good thrower. Now, deep ball, he's been not letting it rip a lot. There are times when he gets some pushback and he throws off his back foot and the ball rises on him. I've seen that happen a couple times. But when he steps into a throw, he's like dead eye accurate between 0 and probably 15 yards. Out routes, guys coming over the middle, guys like stop routes where someone will run 10 yards, turn around and stop. Trey McBride, bang, it'll hit him right in between the numbers. Like, he can execute all that stuff. But that's the main reason with McCarthy, I think. Morale, the Viking schedule isn't all that easy with the in-division games. Well, of course, yeah, it's true. Easy 5 wins out of the division, probably more. Yeah, I haven't looked in depth at who they're playing yet, but if it's the NFC South, I mean, that's a beatable division kind of across the board there. Johnny, do you like Kenyon Sadiq or third wide receiver more in the draft? Ooh, great question. Great question. Great question. So I love Kenyon Sadiq. I think that he's awesome. I watched a bunch of Oregon. I've looked at a bunch of his games, and I've just really liked what I've seen. I mean, he's such a crazy athlete with the ball in his hands. He can run routes. He can make contested catches. But a lot of the NFL now is like, can you as a tight end go a little farther down the field, which you can, and then can you run after catch? That's Colston Loveland. That's Sam Laporta. He's phenomenal running after the catch. Like, he's a nightmare to tackle. People have pointed this out. He's the same size as Derrick Henry. So I might like Kenyon Sadiq. I like the idea of multiple tight ends on the field, improving the run game, being under center more, protecting your quarterback better with all the blitzes and rushes that are coming. So I like Sadiq a little bit more, but you're never going to talk me out of a wide receiver. That's for sure. Vikings TW says teams like good players go all the time. We did it last year. Oh yeah, that's true. But usually that's the problem, is they don't. So you only get a handful of good players that are in free agency. Alex says Murray was terrible last season. If you don't know that, you clearly didn't watch the games. My friend, do you think I didn't watch the games? I have spent probably, I don't even know, at least 10 hours over the last week, not only watching back his 5 games from last year, but also cutting them up using technology and then putting little arrows in them. So when I do my film stuff, I can point out stuff to the audience about how Kyler Murray played. If you don't know that he played well last year, then you didn't watch the games. He had a terrible game against the Seattle Seahawks. He's not the first one, and the rest of his performances were either solid or very good. He was very good against Carolina, a playoff team. He was solid against New Orleans. He was solid to very good against San Francisco. Left some meat on the bone in that game because they were getting killed by Nick Bosa. And what was the other one? Oh, Seattle was a tough game. And the Tennessee game is ridiculous. That's the one where the guy, instead of scoring a touchdown, just drops the ball. So Kyler Murray doesn't get a touchdown. And there's some drops and there's some bad blocking and there's some stuff that you're going to somehow blame on Kyler Murray. They're definitely, well, how about EPA? Everybody loves that EPA stat. What's the EPA for a guy who's supposed to walk into the end zone and then fumbles it out of the back of the end zone and then Murray gets blamed on by EPA? EPA is so bad for individual player analysis. It's just so bad for analyzing one player because it's a team stat. EPA will tell you a lot from a team. Aaron says, thoughts on how Rob has been doing with the cap and signings? I mean, look, I expected them to do more. I'm sure that you guys did too. Working out Hockenson to stay, working out Jones to stay based on other options. Maybe I would have liked Rachaad White better, but I mean, they want someone who could pass protect. They want someone who can catch. They love Aaron Jones. So they decided to do that. They've kept it all together for the most part. I don't know that we can do a huge analysis other than to say that he hasn't given away the future. They haven't made any dumb signings, but they certainly have not moved the needle in the right direction outside of quarterback. What I think is they're showing is they believed that this group could win if they have the right quarterback play. That's what they're showing us. Neil, I'm still a JJ believer. I think that they had to make this move, though. I think that they should keep McCarthy and see what happens next year. It's likely they're going to get, he's going to get a chance even at some point as a backup quarterback. Neil, how dare you be rational? That seems like a very rational take. I've never said that anybody who believes in McCarthy should stop, that you should just burn your jersey. I've never said that. I've always said, see what happens. See where this goes with McCarthy. But you need to be able to win with all these good players now. Roderick, if we could get Love in the draft, greatest show on turf part 2. Roderick is very excited about Kyler Murray, apparently. How about if they got Jeremiah Love in the draft? I could see them being a top 10 offense. I just am having trouble figuring out how you do that without selling out for the future. That's the concern there. Gazinkad, how much would it suck if the main part of your offseason plan backs out right before free agency starts? I mean, failed their physical. Yeah. the Ravens, who let all their players go in free agency and then couldn't get the guy that they traded for. Or, I mean, the Raiders get Max Crosby back, so I mean, they would have rather had the first round picks, but I do think that they had to protect themselves against that. I mean, if they were sitting there thinking we'll probably get Kyler Murray, but if we don't, then what happens? Then you're up a creek, and you've got some serious problems there. Johnny, is Kyler better in 12 personnel? I don't know that he has played a ton of 12 personnel. I haven't looked up their personnel groupings. They did more of that with Drew Petzing, but it was a lot of 3 wide receivers. It was a lot of spreading the field and treating McBride like a wide receiver, Trey McBride. So I think that there will be an adjustment there, but he did play under center. And there are plays where he runs a very traditional under center play action bootleg and completes a 7-yard pass to the underneath route. And you're like, yeah, that's it. Like, he's going to do that with the Vikings, and he's done it here. And I think they will use 2 tight ends a lot in this offense with Oliver. If they got Kenyon Sadiq, that would be crazy with the 3 tight ends running in and out, but why not? It'll be a little bit different, I think, but that's where the league is headed. And he's had to play in, a number of different types of offenses already in his career. So there should be some adjustments to what he likes. There should be some adjustments to play off the run game more than he's been able to. Who's Arizona's? I mean, okay, James Conner's pretty good. He's had some good seasons, but it's not like the guy has had peak Dalvin Cook or Adrian Peterson or something back there. It's not like they've had great run games either. Doomer KO, we still have to extend O'Neal. I agree with that. Definitely agree with that. See, TJ, this is not true. You said, too bad KOC doesn't like checkdowns. He was urging last year. I mean, he was urging JJ McCarthy to check down. He likes TJ Hawkinson catching the ball. Doomer KO, I wonder what they're thinking for 2027. 33% on each Kyler Murray, JJ McCarthy, and draft quarterback. Ooh, that's a good pie chart. Let's think about that. That is a good pie chart. What they're thinking. 2027, I'd go a little higher on Kyler, a little lower on McCarthy, and a little higher on draft. I would go 40% Kyler, 20% McCarthy, and 40% draft a quarterback is how I would do that. Oh, I should leave something open for the mystery. How about 35 and 35 and 10% for mystery? Mystery quarterback X. Chris says Vikings fan, not a particular quarterback fan. Let's give ourselves the most chances of a franchise quarterback. Murray is one, JJ is another. Let's trade for a 2027 first and get even another chance. You make a good point there, Chris, that it is the Minnesota Vikings. I know I've said it before. It's not the Minnesota McCarthys. It's not the Minnesota Murrays. But quarterback is very much a big part of the identity of the franchise, no matter who you have. So I understand where people get very locked in and believe when it comes to, certain quarterbacks, that you get very attached to not only the quarterback, but the idea of the quarterback. Go look at Chicago and how their fans reacted to Justin Fields being moved on from. I mean, they knew they were getting Caleb Williams, but before that, they were convincing themselves that Justin Fields was their franchise quarterback, even though he had done nothing. BM, oh, you're barely over 1,000. 1,000 ELO is good in chess. 1,000 ELO is good. I'm 1,200. So, I mean, none of us are the grandmasters. JD QB Mike, you've been doing a good job of addressing the situation. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I appreciate that. Very nice. I don't know what this means. Doomer KO, I don't know what name mogged is. I feel like I see this now all over the place. Like, what is that? I don't even know what that is. Chris, personally, I don't care who the quarterback is as long as they're good. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Is that you're going to 100%, 10% Burrow. Thank you. You know what? That does become more realistic after this year. I'm just saying. SWAT has wanted Max Betterson, the fullback. He did talk at the combine, I think. Friends of Taz, maybe they should have kept Kwesi till free agency was over. He was decent at finding free agents. Oh, I've found that to be really a funny thing that's happened, is that when a couple of these guys have gotten cut, it's been, see how bad Kwesi was. It's like, now, wait a minute. They have gotten way more success out of free agency. You want to talk about the draft? Okay. That was a whole hour-long podcast about why they failed in the draft. They failed in the draft. There's no question about that. But free agency? They've had a lot of success in free agency. They overspent on some guys last year who produced well for them, but not to their dollar figure, but still produced well and helped them get to a top 5 caliber defense. But yeah, they've hit way more than they've missed in free agency. No question about that. Shadow Wolf, trade Grenard to the Jags for Brian Thomas Jr. If they're going to trade Grenard, I'd want it to be for a high draft pick. Rick, what's next? What free agency move is next? It's been pretty quiet. That's an understatement, Rick. It's been unbelievably quiet. The next thing, I think, is to start finding guys who have a chance to be role players at a couple of these positions. Well, the next thing is to get Harrison Smith's answer. Are you bringing back Harrison Smith? Because if the secondary is now, let's say Harry comes back. If the secondary is, and I guess, keep your eyes out tomorrow, and then we'll know that it had to do with the quarterback situation. But if it's Byron Murphy Jr., Isaiah Rodgers, James Pierre, draft guy, and Josh Metellus, Harrison Smith, Jay Ward, Theo Jackson. I mean, that's good. That's solid. And it's a bunch of guys who have done it before with this defense. And Harrison Smith they'll say, well, we're going to take him off the field sometimes, and they ever will. I also think Theo Jackson, it was his first chance ever really playing and can still be a good rotation player. Jay Ward, we saw some steps from. You're going to have to believe in those guys if you're the team, but maybe you draft Dylan Thieneman. And safety is the position that steps in faster right away than any other spot when that's been studied. So I think it's kind of find a veteran defensive tackle. Maybe there's a veteran pass rusher that can be a rotational guy. Keep Jonathan Grenard for now. I don't see a point in trading him after you've gotten a starting quarterback who you could win with. That's kind of it, though. I mean, really, the free agency was keeping their own guys. TJ says, disappointed with free agency. We didn't bring in anyone. I don't see any big improvements on positions we needed other than depth. Hope we aren't just relying on the draft. The issue is that any needle movers were expensive and they didn't want to do that. And I'm not trying to say it's great that they didn't have a big free agency. It would have been better if they could have found, I mean, we all made these lists of like, here's, and I, some of my friends and listeners have been reaching out like, there goes another guy that you liked. And I'm like, I know, there goes Luke Fortner. There goes Rashad White. There goes, everyone got to learn who Alohi Gilman was. And like, there he goes. Off the board. Come on, Vikings, wake up, go do something. And now the talent in free agency is pretty limited, but it's limited to role players that, well, not exciting. If you get a quality swing tackle that might matter, a run stuffing defensive tackle that might matter, another cornerback or something, a veteran wide receiver 3, it might matter. Maybe it is DeAndre Hopkins. Those tend to be a little bit more effective than when you're talking about, sorry, you guys are funny sometimes, a little bit more effective as signings than when you're talking about some of the bigger ones, for the exact reason that teams let go players for a reason. I mean, even the Max Crosby thing, it was like, whatever you think about what Baltimore did, there was something with the guy's knee, and they're not letting go Max Crosby for no reason. They're all, right. So, a Danley, will KOC actually adjust to what Murray does well? I think one of the things that we have to give KOC credit for is his ability to communicate. And you can say that he didn't adjust, but from Kirk to Sam Darnold, he did. And those are real quarterbacks who have played in the NFL before, who were grown-ups and who knew themselves and were veterans and understood how they played football. when you're talking about, I mean, I don't know who we're referring to even when we say he didn't adjust the offense, because he adjusted it for JJ McCarthy. He just adjusted it in a way that turned out to kind of be revealing about JJ McCarthy. He should have adjusted it to Carson Wentz, but maybe had they had Carson Wentz in the building for more than 5 minutes, it would have been easier to adjust for him. 100%. If you want to say he should have adjusted to Josh Dobbs, I guess. He should have adjusted to Carson Wentz, I guess. Those are bad backup quarterbacks. No offense to Carson Wentz's career, but was not a good quarterback for the Vikings last year. When it came to Kirk to Sam Darnold, those are very different quarterbacks. Sam Darnold is a beast. He is a top 3 pick. He's got a huge arm. He will stay in the pocket and let it loose. He will be super risky down the field. Kirk was much more of a game manager, much more of a don't throw into traffic, anticipation thrower, because he didn't have the biggest arm, had to kind of rely on play action a lot, that kind of thing. And both of them are very good and played really well under KOC. And yet we use the kid who wasn't ready to play and a guy who they randomly traded for in the middle of the season as the evidence that he can't build an offense. I think the biggest thing with Kyler is communicating with Kyler. What do you see? What are you comfortable with? How can we take what we do and work it to what you do? The idea that Kyler just takes the snap and runs away is just totally false. It was true in his first year, maybe even his first 2 years, but it's not true now. He's been an NFL quarterback for a long time. He can run an offense, but how complicated do you want to make it? He was doing a lot of pre-snap motions, a lot of play actions. He was doing a lot of shotgun play actions for the Arizona Cardinals. Do you want to do that, or do you want him under center more? He was under center for 22% of his pass attempts in 2024, and that's not that different from Sam Darnold. I think it was 27%. But he in the run game, though, he was not under center a lot for the run game, which KOC likes his run game under center. So there are adjustments that are going to have to be made for sure. Cause and effect: Debo, Lockett, D-Hop, Gabe Davis do anything for you as a wide receiver 3. Well, the concern, emergency draft sim, I guess we should. The concern, we'll do a big draft thing with Kyler Murray in place next week for sure, or whenever. With those guys is like, are they washed? That's the issue. Are they washed? Would you rather have a draft pick there? Coach Michael says KOC wouldn't have picked Kyler if he didn't think they could work together. I agree. I agree with that. I mean, the one thing that I do think we have to do is give proper respect to. You don't have to say that like KOC is a perfect coach. I spend a lot of my time picking apart the things that are not perfect, but we do have to give respect to that he knows a lot about quarterbacks. And well, his mistake was believing too much in JJ McCarthy and too much in the projection of what McCarthy had shown him in 2024 training camp, and maybe not believing enough in Sam Darnold when it came to the longer term. Although there's economics at play there that are different than this. This is $1 million. We do have to recognize that he has watched every single play with better eyes than any of us will ever watch anything, right? He has watched every single play. He's looked at every single number. He knows way more people than we do. He knows way more about offense than we do, about how to work to Kyler Murray's strengths. He knows people, including Cliff Kingsbury, who have coached Kyler Murray before. This is a decision that KOC didn't wake up yesterday and be like, you know what? What's that little guy doing? We do have to give the proper credit, right? I am curious about now that FanDuel has its over-unders up, what you guys think of that 8.5 number? Since we're continuing the conversation, I'm really enjoying it. This is an exciting day. We're on to hour 4 here. I don't care. This is exciting. I haven't eaten anything in a long time, but I got my Diet Dr. Pepper here. We're doing good. Poor Jonathan Harrison, producer of the show, is going to have to cut up 4 hours of this. Anyway, D-Hop to the Vikings. I guess we'll see. I think that's a fine idea as a wide receiver 3. Friends of Taz, do you think not having actual GM that has connections and has a plan is hurting them in free agency? I do not, because Rob Brzezinski has been around for 30 years. Everybody in the NFL knows him. Every agent knows him. He's been the one negotiating contracts for the Vikings. He knows every single agent. I really, truly believe that it was just the fact that they needed to be sure what they were doing at quarterback. Hunter says, it baffles me to see people complain about KOC and pretend like McCarthy was just a goat being held back. It's a psychological thing is what it is. Because if you, here, I'll give you an example. I remember when I was a teenager and you used to have to, back in my day, you used to have to, and I'm sure that there are better examples than this, but I'll just throw this one out there anyway. You had to go to the record store and buy the CD of the band that you liked. So I remember being a huge fan of a band, and then they come out with a new album, and I drive to the record store. It's 20 minutes away. I grew up in the woods. So it's 20 minutes away. And I end up buying this record, and I'm listening to it on the ride home, and it's just not good. And in my soul, I knew it wasn't good. I knew it wasn't going well, but I loved this band. And so then I'm talking with my friends, but I'm like, no, it's better than you think. It's a lot better than you think. This song is fine. This song is it's way better than you think. And after a couple listens, I was like, yeah, it's just not that good. I can't apologize for it. It's a bad album. And I feel like it's the same way with anything that we like and anything we sort of decide that we like. Every Vikings fan loved the idea of JJ McCarthy, and Purple Insider's podcast loved the idea of building around the rookie quarterback contract. I was the person that, with the largest hammer available, was banging the drum. The biggest drum with the biggest mallet, slamming into it. Rookie quarterback contract. Rookie quarterback contract. Look how many times it's worked. That's why you have to move on from Kirk. It's about Kirk's contract. Boom, boom, boom. I only talked about that for 5 years, and then they finally did it. And I remember when they drafted McCarthy, I was like, they did it. They finally did this thing that I had been banging the drum for freaking ever. And now they can really build a good team and they can really have a chance to win. Wow. And it didn't work out. And they moved on from Darnold. And even when they moved on from Darnold, I know that I was in the camp of, I think this is kind of unfair to Sam Darnold and maybe you should keep him. But I also thought, well, if they really believe in this, then this is, again, great for the franchise. They've got their guy, rookie quarterback contract. But here's the thing. With Kyler Murray, the twist to this is that you still have that advantage. They didn't have to tear down their team. They still have the team that played for them last year that they had built around JJ McCarthy minus Hargrave and Allen. But I'm not saying it's not a decent sized loss, but it's not like they had to tear the team down to afford the quarterback. They have Kyler Murray basically on the rookie quarterback contract for this year. Then it gets more complicated. So, Coach Michael, all this talk about KOC adjusting, can't the quarterback adjust to the offense? The offense works. Kyler is talented enough to make it work. Well, you can't play it the same way you play with Sam Darnold. So you do have to, it's a give and take. Yep. It's a give and take. Is that Meister? Get Debo cheap and play him out of the backfield as well. If Debo can stay healthy, that would be the concern. That would be the concern. I'm glad that you get the album example. You've all been there, right? You've all been there. You've all had that. An actor you love. Hey, it's my favorite series of movies, because now like every movie has to have like 3 or 4 different versions of it. Like, oh, I love the first 2. I'll tell you something here. We are very deep into this conversation. I really liked Pitch Perfect 1 and 2. Pitch Perfect 3 was terrible. And there's a part of you that wants to like it just because you liked the first 2. You liked the idea of it. You liked The Godfather 1 and 2 was probably better. than Pitch Perfect. But if you don't think Pitch Perfect 1 was good, then I don't know what you're talking about. But, I wanted to love Godfather 3. It's just not good. And about halfway through the movie, you're like, this is going okay. This is all right. And that was last year. It's still all right. Hey, he came back and had a good game against Detroit. It's all right. Well, it wasn't really all right. The good thing about a movie versus or an album versus JJ McCarthy is that the band doesn't have to be done playing music forever because they make an album that didn't work out right away. A lot of debut albums, in fact, have not been great. And then bands have turned out to be really good. So I have aged myself many times on the show, but you're right. Yeah. Driving 20 minutes to a CD store is certainly an experience that people should still have. Buy albums, my friends. Own something. Feel the music. Care about it. See it as art. Anyway, Coach Michael says third place schedule. We won 9 games with the first place schedule and the worst QB play in Vikings recent history. Yeah, I know. I mean, and I don't think that's an illogical take because they haven't really changed much about the team. Now, some things that went right last year have to go right again, but a lot also went wrong last year. A lot early in the season. A lot of injuries. Chris, on the FanDuel question about over under 8.5, smash the over on 8.5. This team is really any worse than the one in week 17 last year. No, I mean, they're definitely not that much worse. Somebody DoorDash the man a pizza. Yeah, that's a great idea. I will, I'll probably smash a pizza after this, but I'm enjoying the conversation. Buy vinyls. Totally agree. Spin some Master Puppets tonight. Yep. Someday I'll get the guitar down here and play you guys Master Puppets. Pitch Perfect was good, not perfect. That's funny. Ebrack, why do some people think that they would trade JJ McCarthy? Makes no sense at all. The only, man, Chris, you nailed my humor with the exactly what I was going for. I can't believe someone got the reference. The Simpsons with the ham, with the pig. It's still good. It's still good. That was kind of the JJ McCarthy experience last year. The only scenario that you trade JJ McCarthy is, let's say that Kevin O'Connell, let's say JJ McCarthy comes to you and says, I'm not going to be Kyler Murray's backup. Just trade me. So you call up let's just say the Jets. I don't know. The Jets have Geno now, so maybe let's say you call the Browns. Let's say you call the Browns and the Browns are like, you know what? We will do a trade with you. Your second round pick, or even how about number 18 and JJ McCarthy for I don't know where they pick. It's always high. 5th, 4th, whatever. It's always in the top. We'll trade you our top draft pick to move back to 18, give us JJ McCarthy. And that's if McCarthy goes to them and says, I will never play quarterback for you guys ever again for benching me. I'm done with you. I'm out. I'm not committed to this franchise at all. I'm not going to develop under you. You've disrespected. If that was, I don't think that's the case, but let's just say it was. Okay, fine. Trade him to Cleveland. Then I would do that. Height says Hargrave, Allen, Naylor, Ryan Wright, CJ Ham, Harrison Smith, maybe Ryan Kelly. Not the legit upside this far from the same team. It's not, look, I've said the punter's important, but you're talking about, and I've said CJ Ham is important, but you're talking about the number 3 receiver, 2 underachieving defensive tackles, a center that never played anyway. Harrison Smith's very important. And that's kind of a reach. CM Boo Earns, another Simpsons reference. Do we get Richardson? I'm all for it. 5th round draft pick for Richardson, 6th round draft pick for Richardson. I'm not against that. Welcome to your first live stream. Thank you. Go for who? Sorry about the Gophers yesterday. I tune in for one Gopher men's basketball game and they collapse immediately. Garrett, where would McCarthy get traded to? Yeah, I think Cleveland's the option. I mean, who's left that needs, Arizona. Arizona needs a quarterback. Luke, I guess we still have Carson Wentz as the third option. I'm good with doing that. Absolutely good with going with Carson Wentz. Get Debo cheap. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the idea. It's just the injuries. Oh, wow. Scolders Rise. Thank you so much for the super chat. Wow, really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. I will enjoy a pizza. Maybe I'll even get some wings now on you. Thank you so much. The Browns pick 6th. Okay. I knew it. I knew they were picking high. He does have touch. Oh, he certainly has touch. Yeah. It's just a little airborne. That's honestly one of my favorite lines of all time. Still buy a lot of CDs. That's good. Mike says, do you think Kyler's legs can be used in the designed run game, or is he just a scrambler? I think he's more of a scrambler. I think most of his run game is scrambling. They might do some stuff where maybe it's like an RPO type of thing, but the most of the run game that I've seen of him on tape is he drops back and somebody wins up front quickly, and then he just dodges them and runs for 20 yards. That happens a lot. But also some of his run game is on the negative side. See, this is the thing about Kyler, is anybody who presents Kyler as like a perfect quarterback and like greatest show on turf, as somebody said earlier, is like, oh, okay, let's reel it in a little, because there are a lot of plays where Kyler scrambles too early, where he drops back and he doesn't really stick with the play and just sort of, all right, I'm just going to bail. There's too many of those plays. That definitely still happens. Shadow Dark says, started watching Kyler's highlights and has some great wide receivers: Hopkins, Christian Kirk, AJ Green, Larry Fitzgerald, but seems that his deep ball is not good, only short and mid. So his deep ball, if you're watching 2021 highlights, then his deep ball is fantastic in 2021. He was very, very successful, and I think he had a 99 grade on PFF in 2021. But recently, no. And the guys you're naming, Christian Kirk is not good. He was good with Kyler, but he's not proven to be that good. AJ Green was 100. Larry Fitzgerald was 100. No disrespect. But recently, though, I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr., I was kind of mortified watching Marvin Harrison Jr. Doesn't separate, doesn't catch the ball, just not the guy that they said he was going to be, which, everybody's been through. Everybody's picked somebody that was supposed to be great and didn't turn out to be. Doomer KO, trade McCarthy for a day 2 pick. You don't have to do that yet. I don't think you have to do that right now. Johnny says, would like nothing more than the OG JJ. Oh, you mean Justin Jefferson getting rewarded for his loyalty and professionalism last year? Totally agree. He fought through that last year. Coach Michael, if Felton or a free agent is competent, TD's incoming. Felton has a chance to develop. I think that they can't rely entirely on him, though, that they also need to add someone else. Jay Lang, with the addition of Kyler, is the spiritual continuation of what could have been with Dante Culpepper. I think they're very different. Dante Culpepper was a crazy talent, but he turned the ball over too much, for sure. Fumbled way too much, and was majorly up and down, but also had one of the sickest deep balls that's ever existed in the NFL. That's not really Kyler, but it is similar to, that's the first real scrambler that they've had in a long time. Adam says Harrison made a decision by this time last year. Looks like he's waiting on the draft to decide. Yeah, I mean, that could be. I don't know if he'd be waiting on the draft because they're not going to replace him. Like, if they draft someone, he'll just play with that person. He might have been waiting for the quarterback situation. I don't want to try to speak for Harrison, though, but if it happens tomorrow, I kind of will think that. Mama, wait, we're trading for McCarthy. No. They're not trading McCarthy. It's just that it's being thrown out there. Is that an idea? Corey, does it seem like they're giving up on this season? After all, you said they're paying McCarthy Murray like he's on a rookie contract, but they didn't spend money to keep free agents. Well, they kept Eric Wilson, they kept TJ Hawkinson, they kept Aaron Jones. I think most of the spending was really last year. We're on multi-year contracts, but I also think that the major reason, one is they didn't have any cap space. It's very hard to go into free agency and get a bunch of people when you don't have cap space if you're trying to be ethical about it at all. If you're just throwing away the future, then yeah. But this season for sure. You're only talking about the person who just named the people you lost. It's only the 2 DTs. Jalen Naylor does matter, but didn't catch 30 passes last year. He's good and I'll stand on that, but that can be replaced. And the punter and your fullback. And those guys deserve all the credit in the world. But again, those are people that you can find other players to do those jobs. Everything else is pretty much in place from last year. And I think there will be some additions now that they have this settled, that there will be some guys that they add. Coach Michael, thoughts on how much the receivers will have to adjust with Kyler leaving the pocket early? How do you practice? Yeah, I mean, that's something like the scramble drill is a thing that everybody does. It does take some adjustment. I think what's going to take some adjustment from Jefferson probably and Addison is when Kyler Murray drops back, he might just run on you. Like you might be running your route and be like, oh, I won my route. And he might be gaining 7 yards in a run. And you're like, wait, what happened? There is a little bit of that from some of his receivers on tape where they're looking back like, I was open. There's definitely some of that with Kyler Murray. There's a play right off the bat against the New Orleans Saints where he has 2 different open options down the field and he just scrambles for like 5 yards. And on the tape, you're watching it going, dude, that's there. So there's going to be some of that. I don't think it's going to mean, I think Jefferson's going to get the ball. I think he's going to get the ball a lot. But there will be times where I think the wide receivers will have to deal with that he's just going to run sometimes. Okay. Jamie Gillen and Thomas Morstead, top punters. Morstead, Viking game legend from the Minneapolis Miracle. Height says the Vikings have effectively nuked their young quarterback plans. We're back on the QB carousel. It's comfy here. Well, they wouldn't have done it if they felt like their young quarterback had played well to give them any sort of confidence that they could go forward. That's the part I don't understand. What would you like them to do? I mean, I know, yes, you'd like them to just stick with McCarthy until the whole franchise burns to the ground, but like, how can you do that in their position? When a quarterback plays like that, how can you say, hey, just go with that. Just go with that still. I mean, what usually happens when a team sticks with a young quarterback and it doesn't work out is that everyone gets fired, right? You can't do that. In addition, having Murray on a 1-year deal kind of feels like setting us up to clean house next year. Yeah. I mean, this is, we've gotten to the fork in the road. And they're going to win, or they're probably in for a reset with the roster one way or another. So they're going to win with this group or they're not going to win with this group. That's it. This year is at the end of that road in a lot of ways. And Justin Jefferson's either going to be here long term or who knows. And like there's a lot at stake. KOC is going to be the long-term coach or who knows. With the results from this year, you can't put that all on a guy who played as badly as McCarthy did last year. I mean, anybody who's saying anything else is gaslighting you. I mean, the numbers are what they are. I can't change them for you, even if you want them to. I can't in any sort of objective way screw around with the numbers and try to like shift them over here and paint them this way or that way. They are what they are. The team is making this decision for a very clear reason because McCarthy played as one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL last year. They ranked 28th in passing EPA. I mean, what do you want? Do you want him to take this roster and risk just completely falling apart with it all that they invested $300 million in, or do you want to give it a chance? That's really the options here. Chris says, if I was Harrison Smith, I keep myself in shape and come back when they're 7-4. And maybe he wants to do that. That's not a bad idea. Minnesota Mike, what does PFF say about Kyler Murray's ability to throw intermediate and deep over the middle of the field? Deep over the middle of the field did not happen recently a lot. Most of their deep stuff were to the outsides, but intermediate over the middle of the field, he graded fine, if not good. And I mean, I can show you this. I can just show it to you rather than why don't I show instead of tell? We have it right here. Well, let's look at 2024 as a full season. And we'll look back at 2025, but it's a shorter season. Passing depth right here. So the deep stuff is overstated because his passing grade, see, this is the thing. This is a receiver stat sometimes. Then this is why EPA kind of stinks because Kyler Murray, by the way, only 10% of the passes travel over 20 yards, which is a very similar mark to Kirk Cousins. So 90% of people are obsessing over how does he throw over 20 yards when 10% of the throws are that. But his grade was 78.7, which is okay. And yet he only completed 34% of his passes, which to me says you're not getting a lot of contested catch opportunities because at least some of the throws were there. But if you look at the intermediate here, 86.9 grade in 2024, it's 20% of his throws. And the short stuff we've talked about, 79.1 grade, where is making up 66% of his throws are highly graded areas for him. And numbers wise, 104 and 96 quarterback rating, those are good numbers. And when we go to the intermediate to the middle of the field, 30 for 41 in the between 10 and 20 or between 10 and 20 yards, 11 yards per attempt, 87.8 rating. And when you look over here, 123.3 quarterback rating when throwing in the intermediate middle of the field. So this idea that he just cannot do it is just false. Now, it only made up 7.6% of his passes. Now, if you look at the short and the middle, and I looked at these numbers and I'll show it to you, Kyler Murray threw in the middle of the field 25.5% short. And so this is beyond the sticks, 25.5% plus 7.6%. That is 33.1% of the time. So keep that number in your mind, that beyond the sticks. Oh, and then he threw 0.6 deep. So that's what I mean. Never deep over the middle. That just didn't happen. Apparently he had 3 big time throws when he did it, but it just didn't happen. So, okay, add that 0.6. So that's like 34% of the time. All right, keep that in your mind. 34% of the time, Kyler Murray threw past the sticks and in the middle of the field. Let's look at Sam Darnold 2024 and see how often he did it. Sam Darnold 2024. So we've got short over the middle. He didn't do short that much, 18%. And 12.1, that is 30.1. And then 5.7 is 36.8. So we're talking about the difference of throwing over the middle past the sticks of being basically 34 to 37%. That's the difference between Sam Darnold 2024 throwing past the sticks over the middle and Kyler Murray throwing past the sticks over the middle. Like 3% of passes. So some of the stuff that's out there is just like not really true. So can we do a mock draft? Yes, we can. Let's end on this. Let's do a draft sim. That's a great idea. Where's my draft sim? Where did my draft sim go? Oh, come on. So too many tabs. I'm surprised the live stream even works with this many tabs. All right. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Pizza Gary. Thank you so much for the super chat. You're the best, man. Unnecessary, but let me share the bigger screen. Unnecessary. I always say that. I will answer anybody's questions as much as I possibly can. User PS, listen to you every day since 2020. Wow, thank you. How many wins for the Vikings next year? I will go 10. Right now, that is my prediction. I will go 10 is my prediction for next year. But a lot to go. Thank you so much, though, for everybody for the super chats. You guys are amazing. All right, let's draft sim. Kyler Murray draft sim. Let's go 3 rounds. The Vikings also have a comp pick, so all of you can sleep at night. Let's add a little bit of randomness. Draft for needs, a little more. Positional value, a little more. Okay, let's fire it up. So I'm not going to trade up for Jeremiah Love. I'm just going to let whatever happens, happens. Top of the draft, Mendoza, Ruben Bain. Jeremiah Love goes 4th to the Titans. It just feels like it's written, doesn't it? Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, kind of the expected players. Anybody dropping? Oh, Kenyon Sadiq off the board and Dylan Thieneman off the board. And Caleb Banks. Dang. All right. So where are we at now? Monroe Freeling has dropped. That's interesting as a tackle because they do have some tackle questions. I don't think I could do that right now, though, with the tackle situation. I'm kind of going to let that play out with Brian O'Neill. But if he doesn't sign an extension, you might consider going with Monroe Freeling. Mekhi Lemon that is enticing to go with Mekhi Lemon as a wide receiver 3 and then up to wide receiver 2 if they move on from Addison. Jermod McCoy, corner. Emmanuel McNeil Warren, safety. Avion Terrell, corner. Cassius Howell, edge rusher, if they move on from Jonathan Grenard. Omar Cooper, who I really like. TJ Parker, edge rusher. Caden McDonald and Peter Woods, defensive tackles. Colton Hood. Caden Proctor. Man, if they needed that. Okay, we've got a lot of players on the board here. And what I think is, I don't know if I want to take Mekhi Lemon. It does have great numbers. I don't know if I want to take Mekhi Lemon right here. It's kind of hard not to. Oh, man, I kind of feel like I want to because the uncertainty with Addison and Naylor is gone. I think I'm just going to do this. If I'm the bang the drum all the time for the receiver person and Mekhi Lemon drops, but let's take a look at the wide receiver board and who's got a chance to potentially be there in the second, because you have Omar Cooper, Denzel Boston, Casey Concepcion, Jeremy Bernard, Chris Bell. There's a lot of talent. Elijah Surratt, I like. Zachariah Branch, I like. Maybe I just love all the wide receivers. Do you want to go with Jermod McCoy, who didn't play last year, but played really well in 2024, had the injury? Do you want to go with Avion Terrell? Let's see what's on the trade market. How far can we trade down? 31 feels like too far. That's the only trade offer on the board. So let's make the decision and go with Mekhi Lemon. A now and later pick helps Kyler Murray right now, and definitely later into the future would help them if they're going to move on from Jordan Addison. All right, second round, couple of receivers on the board. Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker. I'm intrigued. AJ Halsey, I think might be my pick here to go with a safety, regardless of what happens. Let's see. I don't really know much. I got to look more into the edge rushers now. I don't know how to pronounce. Is it Yakus? Gabe Yakus? That might be worth it. The edge rushing situation. Jadarian Price is hard to pass up on, but I think I'm going to go AJ Halsey, the safety from LSU in the second round, because regardless of whether Harrison comes back or not, they're going to need that. Okay, now we're on to the third round. Is this where, we could get Connor Liu? I'm definitely interested in Connor Liu. Jake Slaughter is here. Jonah Coleman, Malachi Fields, LT Overton, the edge rusher, might need that. Antonio Williams, we already drafted a wide receiver. Got some interesting prospects here, but I feel like the center is the right way to go. I know Connor Liu's coming off the injury, but he's going to want to develop anyway. Let's go with, let's see. Gosh, there are a lot of good edge rushers here. Kayron Crawford. 18% pass rush win rate. That's going to be hard to pass up, my friends. That's going to be hard to pass up. Do you go with the center or do you go with the edge rusher? Third round edge rusher or center? Well, I'm going to go edge rusher. I'm going to go Kayron Crawford. Now that we're thinking about the long term of that position. I could still get the center now. I can get Slaughter or Liu. I like Jake Slaughter for this. Bryce Lance. But we've already got our receiver. There's so many receivers. Let's take Jake Slaughter and look at our draft. All right. Grade the draft. I went Mekhi Lemon with the first round pick. Just couldn't pass him up. Too good. Too much of a need long term. AJ Halsey, the safety from LSU. Kayron Crawford, an edge rusher from Auburn. And Jake Slaughter, who I've drafted in every single one of these. Did I close out? Let's see. Sorry, I think I closed out the chat. Big black box. Okay. Closed out the chat. Sorry about that. That's the second time I've done that today. Okay. So, what do you think? Mike Washington. Only a C? Do I like Stowers? Kind of. I wonder if he's more athlete and he's not quite ready yet. So, should have traded down in round 3. Fair enough. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up for now. And here's what we're going to do. I've got plans to get... That'd be a great draft. Okay. I always love the variance of opinions. So if you're rewatching this and you made it to the end, oh my gosh, you're insane. But also answer the FanDuel question of the day, which is 8.5 is now the Vikings over under with Kyler Murray. So over or under 8.5. Now that Kyler Murray's the quarterback. Not a bad draft. Lemon could make the Vikings consider dangling Addison. Yeah. Decent draft. Great draft. Okay. You're not all down on it. That's good. So okay, we're going to call it a night, but Josh Weinfuss is going to come on the show at some point, hopefully tomorrow. Arizona reporter for ESPN. I've had a conversation with him already. And Manny Hill is going to react to Kyler tomorrow. And maybe I can even get Murph on for a little roundtable action. So we're going to cover the absolute heck out of this. And now what it means for the draft, what it means for the rest of free agency. Will they start making moves? Will Harrison Smith come back? Lots to discuss, everyone. I can't thank you all enough for all of your support and all of your time, for the number of folks who have watched the entire time through. How many podcasts will this be? I think probably 3. I think Jonathan's going to break it into 3 on the audio side. So, but take the over 2.5 for sure. You might have to do it to 4. I don't know. Those files are going to be really big, but that's all right. You guys have been phenomenal. Thank you so much. And hey, fascinating times, my friends. We will talk again very, very soon.